This episode of Off My Shelf contains coarse language and adult conversation. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, my name is Tracy James, and welcome to Off My Shelf, a podcast about movies that are, well, off my shelf, where we go through my DVDs and talk about the movies in my collection. In this episode, Brendan Craik returns to talk about B-movie, awesomeness, and 80s nostalgia with Mars Attacks and Masters of the Universe. Welcome!
Thank you very much. Happy to be here again.
Yes, because we talk nerd very well, and these are perfect for that kind of talking. So it's great.
Definitely. It's like we would have just caught up and done this anyway, so we may as well record it and get some content out of it, eh?
Exactly. I mean, even last night, just watching Masters of the Universe, I had to watch Netflix's The Toys That Made Us. Because they have like a He-Man thing there. And then I was like going through like, how many He-Man toys do I have? You know, it's a whole thing. It was fine. That was my research, was going through stuff. It was fun.
One of the last times, because I guess I knew that you were into Masters of the Universe, but I never really thought about it. But I remember one of the last times I came to Canada, we went to Fan Expo and you got the Masters of the Universe pop figures.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So I guess I knew that in the back of my mind. Those first pop figures of Masters of the Universe apparently quite valuable. I know Masters of the Universe collectors, and I think those early ones are hard to get. So
okay, yeah, I did a good job. Yeah, because I think I was trying originally to decide on just like one to get, because I'm like, I'm not going to buy all of them. That's ridiculous. That's too much money. And then I was like, screw it. Well, the first like set of them was 5 figures, right? So it was He-Man, She-Ra, Hordak, Skeletor, and Spikor.
Yeah.
Random bad guy. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to skip Spikor, but I'll get like the main 4. That's fine. But the worst part is that like, I don't care about Spikor, but it drives me crazy that I just don't have the whole set. It just drives me nuts.
I suspect, I don't know this for sure, I suspect Spikor is the most valuable one, because I feel like a lot of people felt the same way.
And they were just like, screw it, just burn them in the back. Now, like 4 people have them and they're worth like $1 million each, which is like, what have I done? Yeah. I mean, since then, I have also gotten like artwork. I got a giant He-Man statue from a friend of mine for birthday. What else do I have? I don't know. Right now, that's all I can think of. But I was having fun looking at those yesterday, so it's fine.
So you were into the show growing up?
Into the cartoon, yes, very much so. I don't have any of the original toys or anything because, well, actually, I used to have one of the She-Ra figures. The like, I forget what her actual name was, but she was like dressed like a bee. Okay. I don't know why.
I think I know the one you mean. I'm not as familiar with the She-Ra characters as the Masters of the Universe ones, but I know the one you mean, I think. It was interesting for me because we didn't have a TV. Well, actually, where we lived didn't have electricity, and we had a TV a bit later on, but we couldn't. So I couldn't watch the Masters of the Universe cartoon. Really, I watched it occasionally at like my uncle's house and my grandparents' house, but mostly I know Masters of.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
You were born in the 90s or the 80s?
80s, so 84.
84. Okay. And that was a time where I know this is presumptuous, but electricity was readily available.
Yes.
Why did you not have electricity?
Here in Australia, it was readily available in the 1980s. But where we lived, so my parents had bought like a large country property, and we had built a shed that we lived in. And when I say a shed, it was the equivalent of probably a small house. Like it was very big, had a bathroom, kitchen, all those kinds of things. But we didn't have electricity. And so we lived there while we were building our house. Once we built the house, that did have electricity. Okay. But the shed that we lived in when I was growing up for probably I guess, a couple of years. It's hard to tell with kids. It seemed like forever because we
exactly.
didn't have
It's true. Like you think about your childhood, and everything seemed like it was on TV forever. Everything bad that happened forever. Everything that was good happened forever. They're just like it was like 15 years. You're like it was 2 months. What are you talking about? Yeah.
It seemed like forever, and so I did go to my grandparents a fair bit in that time, so I would watch TV there. Mm-hmm. But not Ghostbusters, that I also missed a lot of. But Masters of the Universe was on early in the morning here, so I wouldn't see it very often. But I love the toys. And so for the longest time, I knew almost nothing about the characters from. I feel like only recently, actually, I've learned about the characters a lot more. Yeah. I had a whole bunch of the toys that I either got or were hand-me-downs from my uncle, and I only had monsters. So I had like 3 Skeletors. I didn't have He-Man. I didn't have Man-at-Arms. I didn't have Teela, but I had Squeeze and Mosquito and all of those guys. So I was very into the property, but I knew nothing about the background of it. Like I didn't know the stories. I knew a little bit after I think I started school and played with like other kids and gathered some things. But like last year, I realized that Mossman is a good guy. That was the first time that I realized that Mossman was a good guy. He's a monster, so I just assumed he was bad.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing. So I'm very happy I watched The Toys That Made Us yesterday because this actually explains the problem that you had, why you didn't have He-Man and Teela and all that kind of stuff. Because apparently they had a supply chain issue. Well, technically it's not a supply chain. It was just like an inventory issue, I should say, where they couldn't keep the main characters on the show. So you'd always have, they had made a whole bunch of like random monsters and stuff that people wouldn't buy, but they'd go there. They'd be like, I want He-Man, I want Teela, I want Man-at-Arms. And they would like forget everything else. So you'd have 10 of everything would come in. All of the He-Mans would be gone immediately, and then you're left with like the random monsters. So, but that also led to the downfall of their toys. So, and the show.
Yeah, which luckily was what I was into. So it didn't affect me too much. And I think some figures were more available here than in North America, and then vice versa. Like it was a weird thing where. My understanding, I'm not an expert on it, but my understanding is there are certain things that were released in Europe that weren't released elsewhere, and there's all kinds of weirdness like that. I know a lot of the figures I had as a kid, which unfortunately, after moving through 3 states and having 3 younger brothers, very few of the vibe.
Yeah.
I know some of the ones I had as a kid were some of the more valuable ones. They were from later on in the toy line. But I do have some. I brought my... original Skeletor today. He's he doesn't have his claws or anything anymore, so he was the one that went back and forth with I think he was Terror Claws Skeletor.
Okay.
And I had the Skeletor whose chest would take damage, and I think the normal Skeletor too. I may have had every Skeletor. I didn't have any He-Mans, but I did have every Skeletor. But I do have a He-Man now. I've got the new one that they released kind of recently, so I don't know if you've seen these, but the Masters of the Universe Origins, which are kind of modern versions, but in kind of that classic style. Mm-hmm. And so I've got every one I've been able to track down in Australia. So nice. I've got quite a big collection. I've got the castle. I've got all of the ones that I would have wanted to have as a kid.
You're like, I'm finally doing it.
I do, and I'm like finding out about the show and all of these things. So I feel like this is actually a good time to talk to me because it's probably the most I've ever known about Masters of the Universe is right now.
Right now, right? Yeah. Well, because and one of the reasons why I watched that episode of The Toys That Made Us yesterday too is because I was trying to remember if this was the first property that did it, but yeah, it was. It's the first property that was like a toy company created something and then a show came out of it essentially to sell the toys. And it kind of worked that way by accident, they were saying. So they're like, look, we're losing because it was Mattel. So they had Barbie and they had the girls market and all that kind of stuff, but they kept losing out on the boys market because Star Wars came out, the G.I. Joes were there and all this kind of stuff. And they wanted something to get more of that market, make some more money, that kind of thing.
I think they famously passed on Star Wars as well.
Yes, they did. Yeah. And that was part of the problem. Their team created He-Man. And then while they were trying to sell it to toy companies, they're like, why are kids going to buy this? They're like, oh, it'll come with a comic book that tells them a backstory. And one company's like, okay, cool. And then another store came along and they're like, they're for little kids. Kids can't read. They're like, oh, we're going to make a cartoon. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they made a cartoon. That's how He-Man came into existence. It was just like, we have toys and we have to figure out how to sell them to people. Okay.
And I think there was a little bit of controversy on his kind of early origins because at a time they were going to make a Conan line, I believe, like right before. And I don't know why that didn't work out, but they were going to make a Conan line. It didn't work out. And then they introduced this kind of similar barbarian character in Masters of the Universe. And I think there was this idea that maybe they'd reuse some of that early stuff that they had planned for Conan. And I actually think long-term he doesn't resemble Conan very much. But no. I suspect that probably was maybe the beginnings of at least the He-Man part of that line. I think there's obviously much bigger science fiction aspect to it, He-Man than there is to Conan.
Well, Conan's more like fantasy because it's like it's magic and all that kind of stuff. Whereas He-Man's like it's tough guy on another planet. So you're just like it's science fiction now. It's totally different things.
And I think there's still that magic because you still got your evil Lins and your kind of those characters, and then you've got and I think that's what makes it really interesting and maybe why it worked really well. And then you've got that kind of more sci-fi vehicles, and because the vehicles obviously another big part of Masters of the Universe, but then you have giant like magical tigers and a guy that changes form. Well, it's arguable how much he changes form. He changes outfits from Adam to He-Man. But you've got that magic versus that sci-fi aspect, which I think was maybe a big part of why it appealed to kids like me, or probably yourself. And that maybe if we start to think about the movie, I think maybe that's part of what they missed a bit in the movie. I think they focused on one aspect of that a lot more than the other. There was, to me, and watching it again, I realized maybe how much of this was the case. It was very much more sci-fi and very much inspired by Star Wars.
Yes. Oh my God, I was thinking exactly the same thing. I was watching it. I was just like, this is clearly like, we're going to take all of our inspiration from Star Wars with a little bit of He-Man sprinkled on it. Like, that's what they did.
Just Darth Vader.
Yeah.
It's just Darth Vader.
Well, and even like his like soldiers, whatever you want to call them, the dudes in like the black suits or armor or whatever. I was like, they're black stormtroopers. Yay.
Yeah.
That was it. But apparently they were supposed to be robots. That's why they kept blowing up.
Oh, I did not get that at all.
I didn't get it either. I read that. I had to read it.
Yeah. I thought they were just guys in armor. And because they didn't look that dissimilar to like what Man at Arms was wearing. So I just assumed that's like the armor that they wear.
They wore, yeah.
Yeah. And there you go, robots.
Yeah, one thing I found fascinating, though, is I didn't realize that Adam wasn't part of the original idea for He-Man. Adam came purely in the cartoons.
Yeah, he's not in the mini.
His alter either.
I think, or at least early on, he wasn't in the mini comics. Is the way?
Yeah, no, he wasn't. Yeah. He wasn't. Like, he wasn't part of the original line. He was like Man at Arms and He-Man, Tila, and stuff were, and Skeletor. Yes. Like him changing and all this kind of stuff was not part of the original like mythos they came up with. So he wasn't like a thing, and neither was like Cringer. So then they had Battle Cat, but Battle Cat was part of it. I was like, what? That's crazy.
And Battle Cat, maybe one of the biggest things missing for me in the movie is Battle Cat. Like, and I don't know how they would have done that.
I don't know either.
I get why he probably wasn't a part of it. But I think that was something I noticed. I wonder if then maybe there's part of me that just thought that they did their own thing in the movie, but did they take some more inspiration from the mini comics maybe than the cartoon? Because potentially they were a bit more mature than the cartoon was. And maybe, I'm not too sure. That's just something kind of interesting that I was just thinking when you mentioned that Prince Adam wasn't in the comics, because he's not in the movie either.
No, he's not. Well, because even when they strip him of his sword and stuff, he doesn't like transform back. He's just like in his underpants. That's it.
He's not all of a sudden wearing a purple vest.
Yeah. with the fur on the collar, the good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was another big not miss necessarily, a big change, I suppose. I don't think that's a bad change necessarily. I don't know how unless you really change Prince Adam to look different, I don't know how you sell that Prince Adam to He-Man change in a movie where it's very clearly obvious they're the same person.
They just put glasses on him. It's fine.
Yeah. That always works.
Always works. I don't know. I think the biggest mistake about it is that they brought the story to Earth, really. Like, Earth is not needed in any of this. Like, keep it at Eternia, keep it, them fighting each other. None of this, like, interdimensional travel with music tones for no reason and dead parents for also no reason. Like, it was just like they threw this whole Earth thing in out of nowhere.
I agree. I think I get it, and I'm 99% sure it was budgetary reasons that they came to Earth, and that most of the fights took place in warehouses and alleys and a very empty street. But because when they're in Eternia, it looks pretty amazing. Like, Grayskull looks cool. Like, I think towards the end, you see they maybe overuse that set a little bit, and you see the edges a little bit. You see some of the loose threads when they return there, and that whole last battle scene that happens there. But initially, especially, I think Grayskull looks great, and the throne room and all of that stuff looks really great. I know it's a canon picture, and I know Canon were famous for doing things kind of on the cheap. And I seem to remember watching a documentary about Canon, and that maybe that they were putting a lot of money into this already, so that maybe they had to find a way to cut some costs to make it viable for them to do it.
Well, if I remember correctly, the last battle sequence in the throne room has very little lighting, no extras or anything, and they do that like weird shadow fight thing because they ran out of money. Like, they had to they were cutting back on power, extras, lighting people, everything. And that was supposed to be the epic scene. And you're just turn off the lights. We can't do this. No extras, nobody else is around. Nothing blows up, just swords. Good. Done.
And I think that's maybe you could say a downside. That moment, though, is actually one of my favorite bits of the movie, with the lighting behind them, because again, maybe they didn't have any overhead lights, but it works really well. It's kind of that not flash dance, that Footloose, with the silhouettes.
Oh, and, yes.
The red lighting only from the waist up, because they couldn't show what their legs were doing. And actually that sequence maybe isn't perfect from a fight choreography point of view, but it feels really iconic. Watching it now, I remembered it. I hadn't seen this movie in years, and I remembered that right away. As soon as that started, I was like, "Oh yeah, now it's getting on."
That's the good stuff.
And I think I think maybe this is a budgetary thing too. He-Man rarely uses his sword in the movie.
He doesn't.
He's using that gun all the time,
which was driving me crazy. I'm like, you're supposed to punch people and cut people in half. That's what you do. Why aren't you doing it? And I was oh.
I'm guessing red beams cost less than teaching someone sword fights. So, yeah.
I love that you were talking about the choreography wasn't good. The choreography wasn't good for anything, nothing. I spent half the movie going is this just his friend running behind them with a camera? It's like my university thesis project, and we're just running around with a camera and having outfits on. That's what it came across as. Also, sorry, the budget was $22 million. I'm just gonna let you know.
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty big, I think, for Canada, who are making kung fu type things and stuff like that a lot at the time. Which again, obviously they got in another direction, because I know they were making kung fu movies. They could have taught some choreography and stuff to these guys. Potentially, they had those people that they were working with. But you mentioned choreography, and I don't know if there's choreography or just a weird choice of take. Maybe they were rushing. There's a scene where they're in an alley, as they're prone to be in this movie quite a lot. And Tila comes in, and one of the characters comes back. I think it might have been the boyfriend. And so he comes back, and she pulls her gun on him, and then realizes that it's him, immediately goes to put back her gun, but misses her holster and hits herself with the leg a couple of times before she gets it back in her holster. And I'm like, you couldn't have reshot that. You left that bit in the movie. She's supposed to be this really good warrior, but she can't put her gun away.
Yeah, it's the Ed Wood style of directing. One scene, what doesn't matter what happens, done. Take it. Let's go. Yeah.
And overall, I think it works pretty okay considering. I feel like it has a lot against it. I think the story that they're telling worked. Whether or not it's a good Masters of the Universe story, another question.
Sorry, I knew a lot of head shaking when you said, I'm like, the story works. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It does not.
I feel like I'm predisposed to liking these kinds of movies. I was watching Howard the Duck the other day with my son because he's been wanting to watch it. It's maybe not a hugely appropriate for 2.5-year-old, but I watched it when I was about that age, and I feel like most of the stuff flew over my head. So he put it on. I knew he probably wouldn't want to watch it very long. And damn, I just love that movie. Like, I know it's a bad movie, and especially the second half of that movie, very, very bad. But the first half of it, man, I just enjoy it. Like this weird duck hanging out in like grimy cities in America with like giant 80s hair and punks. And it very much is, Masters of the Universe was very much that as well. Like people in grimy alleys with fantasy clothes on. I don't know. There's something about that really appeals to me, despite knowing that maybe it's not.
I really wanted to say, oh my God, I love Howard the Duck, but I'm like, I can't say that because I haven't seen Howard the Duck in probably 20 years. And I remember loving that movie. Like, I was like, I know it's bad, but it's great at the same time. What's wrong with you people? There's like arts here. But now I'm just like, I got to look at it again. What?
It's unfairly judged, Howard the Duck. Maybe unfairly judged by the second half of the movie, which I agree is pretty bad. It kind of almost turns into Masters of the Universe at the end with aliens and things. But
well, I mean,
really nice, like a relationship between a lady and a duck, and they're just helping each other out. And she's doing the best she can, and he's a duck out of where he's meant to be. And then, it's lovely.
Because even watching Masters of the Universe this time, because maybe it's because I have to pay attention to it when I'm getting ready for these things, and I paid too much attention, but so much joy out of this movie was drained out of me watching it this time. I'm sitting there going, what is happening? Where is it? The story makes no sense. Half these people don't even belong here. Who the hell is that guy? What is going on? This is me the whole movie. And I can't even say, like, at least the fight was good, or at least the a couple of the costumes are pretty cool.
I think the costumes were pretty,
Yeah, I have to, Skeletor's costume was pretty, like, beautiful. Like, I loved it. It still works.
Golden version at the end.
Oh my God. That weird helmet with, like, wings coming out of the back and, like, 3 feet of horns for some reason, and I don't even know how, like, he could have stood straight up with that thing on his head. Like, it just made no sense.
Tila's outfit, not so sure about, but I think He-Man's outfit was a pretty good reimagining of He-Man in kind of live action.
Oh, like, yes, yeah.
It had all of the key kind of parts to it. And I think Man-at-Arms, like, obviously wasn't orange, but I think he had the moustache and he had, like, the helmet with the things that fall down. Like, I feel like they were
have enough, like, gadgets. Like, I remember Man-at-Arms having, like, gadgets.
Yeah. No,
am I misremembering that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. He has, like, I feel like he uses gadgets twice, but they're so not memorable that I can't think what they actually are off the top of my head. Like, he makes something explode and something else maybe happens. Like, largely, he's just shooting guns.
Exactly. And they all are.
Yeah, every character is just shooting guns.
And there's, like, a super angry police officer for no reason.
Yeah, like
somebody runs up to you and saying, this building was on fire and somebody you know was in there. And your first thing to do is arrest them instead of being like, oh my God, let me help you actually find this person. It worries me.
Yeah, he wasn't a good police officer. I don't think he was doing high-level policing. He was just running around yelling at people and wielding a shotgun.
Yeah, he played the same character he played in Back to the Future. He's just a vice principal who's very angry all the time.
Yeah, except now he has a shotgun.
Yes, very, very different. Very different, yes.
which is the only kind of real world weapon. Again, it felt a little bit out of place amongst all the laser guns. There's just this one guy running with a shotgun. Although I don't remember him ever really firing it. I feel like he
when they ended up back in Eternia, I think he fired it like twice.
Yeah, I was trying to remember if he fired it in that battle because I couldn't remember him firing it there. Yeah. And that's maybe his best moment is when he just decides to stay in Eternia, where they've seemingly been for 5 minutes, but he already has a wife and he's got like a new outfit.
I didn't get it either. I was going like, what? Why are you staying here again? What's happening? Yeah. I don't know.
The battle finished, and then all of a sudden it was like they'd spent months there, but they clearly hadn't. But he was just there in his weird robes now with his very young girlfriend that he'd found.
Like tops had been a week, and I'm like, you can't. First of all, he didn't believe in it. Like the whole night they were running around or whatever, yelling and screaming. He spent most of the time he was there getting shot at. And then all of a sudden he's like, there's a pretty girl and I took a shower. I'm going to stay here forever? What?
And maybe it's because of budget and the fact they never left the throne room once they got back. Like, because early on we see other bits of Eternia quite a bit, like in the early scenes. But in that last scene, Eternia is just that throne room. Like, that's the only part of it that we see. And so maybe that's part of it. To me, it felt like it was directly after the battle. Like, they went directly after the battle. They were just talking, and then they cut to a wider shot where he's suddenly wearing a different outfit and has a girlfriend, and he's like, I'm staying.
That's definitely what it felt like. Yeah.
And then, I mean, maybe we're skipping a lot of the movie, and I'm going to jump right to the ending, and then they go back in time?
Okay. I have so many questions about this because it makes no sense. Because except for the bad guys, nobody from Eternia knows that this girl's parents are dead. Okay. Yes. Or her boyfriend knows, but nobody's been talking about her parents being dead or when it happened or how it happened or whatever. And then all of a sudden they open this portal, send it back to Earth. The portal's already open, and then she's like, send me back in time. And then she's magically back in time. And
there's been no indication whatsoever that device can send people through time.
No, because not until that exact point.
If they could have traveled back in time and fought Skeletor before he powered up. Like, right? There was that adds so many holes to that movie that didn't need to exist. There's also that bit where Evil Lynn turns into her mum. And she's like, we've been away doing some important work. And I didn't, maybe it was a good double blind because I didn't get it. I was like, did I zone out for 5 minutes? Like, how are her parents back? This makes no sense. And then I clicked that it was Evil Lynn. But how did Evil Lynn even know about it?
Well, because remember when they were beating up the boyfriend at the house, the bad guy with the bad skin and the big blonde hair, he found like a picture in a box, and he was just like, it's this picture is clearly from this newspaper cutout. So,
okay.
It was like a millisecond that also
I obviously zoned out for that bit. Yeah.
It didn't make any sense that he would have put 2 and 2 together, to be honest. But he did and showed it to her, and she's like, this will come in handy. And then it came at that part. So that's how I know the bad guys knew about it, but none of the good guys knew about it. Yeah.
And then, they just changed time or sent her to I don't know. That was the worst part of the movie for me. It also seemed unnecessary. It seemed like she'd come to terms with losing her parents, but she and her boyfriend had resolved. That was enough. The only really out kind of outstanding part of the story was, will they stay together? Because she was talking about breaking up. And I mean, that was kind of a throwaway storyline that really didn't go anywhere after the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Because she was going to New Jersey for some reason?
School, maybe? To work at the other chicken shop? I'm not sure. I was talking to my wife, and I was like, we were talking about fried chicken for some reason, and I was like, I'm actually about to watch Masters of the Universe. And from memory, fried chicken plays a big part in this movie. It didn't play as big of a part as I remembered it playing, but I thought there were more parts at that fried chicken shop. I don't know, that part must have connected with me as a kid. Mm-hmm. I think it was the bit when they're in the bushes eating the fried chicken, and Gwildor is eating it in like that really gross way where he gets gravy all over his beard, and then he's like eating the thing. And for some reason, that really was maybe the only bit of the movie I could remember before I watched it last night. And that bit I vividly remember, the bit of them sitting in a bush eating chicken.
Well, one thing I didn't understand is why Tila was so grossed out about it. Like on Eternia, are they like vegans or something? Like, what do they eat?
It seems like they'd added that for reasons. That's the impression I got. Why is this meat on these white things? And then her dad, who's like this hardened armies guy, is like, they're dead animals.
You're like, I don't care. Take it or leave it.
It was a weird extra thing to add that never went anywhere either. So, like, again, Tila was so underdeveloped. Like, I feel like she was the most underdeveloped of every character. She would just follow them around.
Yeah, she didn't do anything. And then she'd save the day for no reason. And then she'd disappear again for a while. And she'd just stand in the background going, I made faces, people. It's faces. She's making faces.
They were very good. They transferred very well to an audio format. But yeah, maybe that was what that bit was all about. They were like, Tila doesn't do anything in this movie. We need to give her a character trait. Maybe she's vegetarian. Maybe she's a vegan.
I like the fact too that if you watch the scene, she's eating it. She finds out there's animals. She's grossed out by it. Her mouth is still full of food. She doesn't spit any of it out. She drops the food in her hand, but doesn't spit any of the stuff out. So she was enjoying herself. It
was good fried chicken. Like, you don't just throw away fried chicken. Even if you realize you shouldn't be eating it, by the time you've eaten it, you're just going to go with it, I think.
Yeah, it's too late. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just absorb it. Just let it take over. You just never have it again, which will be difficult because fried chicken is amazing. You will have deadly cravings for it. And
Gwildor obviously loved it because he was covered. His filthy face was covered in it, and I think that's why I remembered it as a kid. I just remember thinking he was so gross in that scene, and I liked gross things as a kid, so I think that appealed to me. Gwildor generally a weird little guy.
Yeah. I think he was a replacement for Orko, to be honest, because you can't have this weird little dude floating around if you don't have like CGI budget. Obviously,
they only had floating budget for those weird discs in that one scene, like
where everybody was standing still on it. It was like an action figure. They like tilted to like, look, it's moving.
I feel like even at the time they could have made Orko like some kind of a puppet or something. I feel like he was doable, but instead we'll just get a little person and put so much makeup on them, so much makeup that their face barely moves.
Yeah. They're. I realized that. I actually thought before. I always thought like it was pretty well done. You know, you could at least see them talking. No, their lips and their lower jaw doesn't move at all. It goes up and down, sort of. But that's
from scene to scene, his makeup doesn't always look like. Sometimes it works pretty well. Like sometimes he is able to emote, and then at other times, like you say, it's almost like you can see his mouth underneath moving. Yes. And maybe that was late in the day when the glue was starting to wear off a little bit. And they were just like, we just need to film this and get it off.
Yeah. Oh my God. I was supposed to note there was one scene where Skeletor does do that. It was one of the, I think this one he's in like the gold helmet and stuff. They do a shot of him sideways, like a profile shot, but you could see the front of the Skeletor thing isn't moving, but you can see in the space in the like mouth, like his mouth moving inside.
I saw that too. I also had that as one of my notes, that at one point you could see his mouth inside of his mouth. But that's okay. Like I think some of that was just limitations of the time. It's like that classic. Have you seen that picture from Ninja Turtles where if you brighten it, you can see teeth and like a human face inside Michelangelo's mouth. If you just brighten one of the scenes, it's terrifying.
I'm not surprised, but no, I've never done it. So there's something to do the next watch.
I'll send you the picture later. You can pop it on your Instagram. I'll find it out. It's very funny.
Okay.
But I think that was, and there were a lot of things like that where I don't know if the choices were because they just didn't have the budget, but like all of the villains, there's so many villains to pick from in Masters of the Universe. And apart from Beastman and Evil Lyn, and obviously Skeletor, they didn't use any of them.
Yeah, which I think is crazy.
Yeah.
Like they made up what's his name? Spike, the guy with like the swords or whatever, or the knives. Blade.
The only reason I know his name is Blades is because I had the figure of Blades. So he was one of the very few movie characters that got a figure, and I had him. He was one of probably my least favorites as a kid, but I did have him, and I think there were maybe one or two characters from the movie that got figures, and I think maybe there was even a couple of Dolph Lundgren looking He-Man, and then there were some questions over likenesses, and they stopped doing that. But there was Blades, and I remember Blades as being pretty intimidating because the figure is obviously on that same body that all of the human characters in He-Man are on. Mm-hmm. So he's like super beefy. He's got like this super solid head. He looks kind of old as well in the toy. So that's the way I remembered him in my memory. Watching this movie, he was very slim and he was very much younger than I remembered him being.
He was wearing a chainmail dress. Like there was only one scene where you saw him from head to toe, and they pulled back and I was like, is that he didn't have pants on, he had boots on, no pants, chainmail dress thing, that was like an uneven hem, and then he had like blades on his shoulders and blades on his helmet. I was like, what is this? Who designed this? What is going on?
He got a lot of screen time because I think he was the only villain that could fight this costume. Yeah. So I think he got a lot more screen time than some of the others, the other villains. The snake guy looked pretty awesome with the breathing neck thing. Yeah. And then they immediately killed him off. Like, he was obviously just too expensive. And they were like, nah, we can keep Blades. We can keep Beastman. We can keep that. I forget what his name is, the guy with the big hair. And and he had a lot going on. But we can't keep the snake. The snake's just too expensive. And we need an extra person just to breathe for him. So we're going to fire both of you guys. Sorry.
Was that Craig?
Horrible. Yeah. Maybe Korg maybe, or something like that. Carg.
Carg. C-A-R-G. Carg.
He had so much going on. He had that weird face, almost like half cat, half creepy monster thing.
He just looked like he left his night cream on and needed to wipe it off. Like,
and then he was like 90% hair, and then he had a hook hand as well. He was like, we've got a few character designs we want to use. Well, you only get 4 villains, and we're killing one of them off. How about we put all the villains into this one character?
All right, we got stuff. Let's do it.
And then you've got Beastman, who at first looks all right, and then you see him move at all, and he runs like this kind of chubby man running in overalls, and like, because he's got that sort of saggy fat fur pants that he wears. He always looks like he's having trouble running anywhere. And then they burn half of his face off early in the movie as well for again some reason, and then we get that. So we got Beastman, I guess, who was at least a character from He-Man.
But like you're saying, he didn't do anything. And then, like, the 2 scenes he, quote unquote, does something. One of them was hiding under Karg's skirts because, Skeletor yelled at him. And you're like, what? What is happening here?
Yeah, no, Beastman didn't come out very well.
But yeah, no, like, Beastman was just not used correctly. Didn't
Beastman control animals or something in the cartoon? He had cool stuff he could do, and he looked scary. In this, he didn't look scary. He looked like someone had like found what was left of the Harry and the Hendersons costume, stripped all the animatronics out of it, and then just glued it to a man.
Who knows? That might be what happened. In the 80s, they were very thrifty like that. Somebody made something cool. We're like, we're going to make something else cool out of that cool thing.
Yeah, I don't know if Beastman was cool. I think he, unfortunately, was maybe the worst looking of those guys. I think the Blades didn't look good. Okay, maybe none of... Karg looked okay. He had a lot going on. Karg looked fun, and the snake was really cool.
Yes. Yeah, I was shocked. I thought Blades was the one who died first because I was like, he sucks. Kill him first. Keep the snake dude. But no, that's the snake dude was the one they killed first.
He was the cheapest because that's why he got so much screen time. And I'm confident he was a stuntman. That was probably... They were like, we can use him in the one fight against He-Man where they use swords outside of the end. So we gave a reason to use He-Man. And it doesn't matter that maybe Dolph Lundgren can't sword fight because we'll use this stuntman to kind of cover that up.
He couldn't, like, look, I have watched a lot of things that Dolph Lundgren has been in, including the original Punisher movie, which also has not aged well. Don't watch it. No need to. It's fine. But, I've seen him do all his action things, and they're fine. They're fine. But everything that they have him do in this movie is horrible. Yeah. But then I found out that this was like his second movie that he's ever done in like English language, because he had just been in Rocky, where he played
Rocky.
Yeah, and Rocky was his first one.
Playing someone who wasn't a native English speaker, so that was okay in Rocky. And he didn't need to do a lot in Rocky except stand and look intimidating. That was really all he needed to do. And he did a great job of that. I think in this, they were asking him to do a little bit more. And actually watching him now, I was going in expecting his acting to be horrible.
Yeah.
And I think he was about on par with most of the other good guys. Like,
yeah.
I think Skeletor and Evil Lyn were better. And I think Evil Lyn looked good. Like, speaking of villains that didn't look good, I think Evil Lyn looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think she was well cast and like well presented. Like, she comes across as menacing, I think.
Yeah.
So it works.
Good. And they were both, I think they were the two best actors. Like, I think Evil Lyn and Skeletor are probably the two best actors in the movie. Skeletor, is it Frank Langella that played?
It
Skeletor,
is, yes.
And he seemed to be enjoying what he was doing and having fun with it. And he wasn't the cartoon Skeletor, but he was that kind of very exaggerated, over-the-top villain. And I think that worked pretty well. And
yeah, he chewed scenery real good. And you're just like, yeah, I get this. You cast correctly.
Yeah, he committed. Yeah. He really fully committed to being that, and I think he worked really well. And like I say, I think the good guys, Tila had nothing to do, but I think they were serviceable. Like, I think all of the acting was, to me, serviceable. Like, it was about what I would expect in one of these kinds of movies at the time.
Yeah, it's true. Like you can't say it was good. You can't.
No, I'm not saying that.
But most of it, you can't say it was just like, oh my God, how did these people get these jobs? Blah blah blah. They were clearly hired as you'll do. This is fine.
Yeah.
This is fine.
You look a bit like this person, or like you're a pretty lady. You'll look nice in this tight outfit that we're going to put you in.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you noticed this in the opening credits when the names were popping up. I was paying a little bit of attention, but I was kind of half zoned out. And one of the actors is called Christina Pickles. Is Christina Pickles Tila? Because there were only 3 female characters.
No, Christina Pickles was the sorceress.
Oh, okay. Christina Pickles was awesome then. That's such an interesting name.
So I looked her, because I was looking at her and I'm like, I recognize you from things. Like, why do I recognize your face? And per usual, I've just watched way too much TV, too many things. And the first thing I found out, she was in Friends, and I'm like, I haven't watched Friends. Also, reunion with Courtney Cox, whatevs. So I was like, that's hilarious. But then I was like, oh, she was in Wedding Singer and Romeo and Juliet, and I was like, oh, I get it. I know. Where she plays
I don't remember her.
She plays small parts. Like in The Wedding Singer, she is Drew Barrymore's mother.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah,
and then in Romeo and Juliet, she is Juliet's mother.
Okay, cool.
So those are the two things I was just like, oh, I recognize. Oh, that's where like her face will pop into my head, because this is what I recognize her from. Yeah, easily.
But in this, you can only see her face too. So you've got no idea what her hair looks like or any of those sorts of things. So that probably is another reason why I wouldn't have necessarily recognized her in other things going forward. Christina Pickles. So Christina Pickles and Courtney Cox had some sort of friendship, and she went on to maybe bring her across to Friends too. So
maybe, I don't know. I have no idea what seasons she was in. I am not a fan of Friends, so
I haven't seen it, but
so I can't give you lots of answers in that.
Courtney Cox was in this.
Yeah.
And her boyfriend.
Yes. Tom Paris. Gonna put it out there. Yes. Robert Duncan McNeil. Yeah.
They were fine. Again, they were products of the story, I think, that was being told, not being maybe most people's first pick for a Masters of the Universe story.
Mhm.
But as random boyfriend and girlfriend, I think they were fairly likable. And
yeah, there was nothing wrong with their characters. I just think there was no purpose to them. They weren't used very well. And, they were just like, what do we do? They're like, just act. They're like, okay.
we need an excuse to have He-Man on Earth to save some money. We probably, if we're going to put him on Earth, should have some human characters too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my problem isn't even the fact that there were a couple for the reason for He-Man to be on Earth. My problem is that intense backstory they had was just unnecessary. None of it made there was no point to any of their intense backstory. Maybe if her parents died in a plane crash because the key went back in time and blew up their plane. Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, the rest of it would just you're like, but why does her parents have to be dead? Her parents could be alive. She could just be a kid who works at a diner and she's hanging out with her boyfriend and they find a thing.
You're right. It added nothing to the story having no parents.
Yeah, because it doesn't resolve anything. They don't develop because of it. They don't change anything. As soon as He-Man and stuff show up, they forget instantly.
And it's not they needed to get the parents out of the way because his parents aren't in it either. It's not like they just wanted a reason to have kids kind of be on the loose without parents around. His parents aren't in the movie at all. So it doesn't. Yeah, it's a weird decision. I think, again, to maybe try and develop characters that they recognize didn't have maybe that much development, but then also not doing anything with it. I think exactly what you said, if the key had been the reason her parents had died, okay, cool. Now that's a bit more interesting. Now she's got some stakes. Maybe that's why she doesn't like Skeletor. She's got some kind of things to build off, but it doesn't go anywhere except for it is a plot device to use to one kind of trick her in one scene, and then at the end create an ending that's far more complicated and makes no sense. Unnecessary.
It is unnecessary because even that trick, if her parents were still alive, that trick still could have worked. She could have been she'd be like, "Oh, how did you get here? We came looking for you." Done. That's it.
Probably more likely to work too, because she would know that her parents aren't buried in a graveyard because she visited them out earlier in the movie.
Exactly. Which 3 seconds later they find the key and completely forget that they were sad. And they're like, "Oh, it's a synthesizer from Japan." I'm like, "Is that?" You find a random thing in a crater in a graveyard, and you're like, "It's a synthesizer from Japan." Gotcha. Good job, guys.
That's a real trope, and I think maybe it was especially a trope in the 80s of that, because I think in the 80s Japan was seen as that really futuristic place, and I mean we both have lived in Japan. It's futuristic in ways, but in other ways not. But I think that's going to be a thing in the 80s. But I remember actually this was while we lived in Japan, going and seeing Transformers, and there's a joke like that in Transformers about some technology being from Japan, and it's like, man, are we still doing this in the early 2000s? And so as soon as they made that joke, that's what I thought of. And because I watched it in Japan, and I remember just cringing when I saw that scene in Transformers, and I don't know that the people in the cinema with me really thought much of it, but I felt like, come on, as a Westerner, we could do better than this. We could do better jokes than this.
I mean, I also think in general, they didn't really get a lot of the humor, or maybe it's just how they take in movies is different, because we went to go see Hairspray while we were there. And were you there, or was it just the girls who went to go
I don't think I saw Hairspray with you guys. Yeah.
Well, maybe we saw Hairspray, and to be honest, that version of Hairspray it does build on the original, and I think it's hilarious and well done.
This is the John Travolta.
Yeah, and he's super creepy, but that's the whole point. Anyways, but there are parts that are hilarious. There are where we would just start laughing, and the rest of the theater is completely silent because they don't think the jokes translated well, or maybe the actual translation didn't do justice to the jokes. I don't know. I thought it was fine, but it was very clear people weren't getting it.
Yeah, and it's hard to know because obviously we're watching it in English. We're not reading the translation. Well, I certainly wasn't. Like, I don't read Japanese. So not knowing what they've actually, they didn't speak English, if they're actually reading the subtitles, you're not sure what they actually read. Exactly. and I wonder if some of that is, I don't know, maybe that culture that they tend to be people that are quieter.
Yeah.
That, like a bit more reserved in sharing their emotions and things like that. And I wonder if that plays a role in some of those kinds of things as well. Yeah, really interesting. Because Transformers, I feel like, played pretty well in the group that I saw it with, but those jokes died. But to be fair, they weren't good jokes because they died for me as well. So
yeah, but it was also in Transformers. Those were kind of bad movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
and it probably wasn't the first one. Yeah. Or maybe it was the first one.
I don't think it was the first one because I saw the first one in Canada. So it would have been after the first one.
Yeah. So maybe it was. Actually, I think maybe it was the first one because I think it took a while to come out there. I think it came out like right after I left Australia. And then because I remember me and our other friend Ross, we'd both been in Japan for a while and we'd wanted to see Transformers and we couldn't see it because I think it took a bit longer to come out there, maybe.
It did come out in 2007.
Yeah. It was the first one, so it was okay, Transformers.
Well, my problem with the first one is that it had a quote-unquote good story compared to the other movies, but you couldn't... Oh, this may have been the last movie I saw before I came to Japan.
I reckon.
It came out July 3rd, 2007.
Yeah, I reckon you saw it right before you came, and then we saw it kind of a little bit after that, I would guess.
Yeah. But, like, my problem with the first Transformers movie is that when the robots were fighting or when they were transforming, you couldn't actually see what was happening. Like, you couldn't make out what was going on. It was just like you had a robot in a truck, and in between was just like mash of metal. You're like, and noise, and wow, it was one or the other suddenly. But then as the movies went on, they figured out how to actually like show the fighting properly and show the transforming properly. But then the stories got worse and worse and worse and worse, and the actors got worse and worse and worse, and you're just like, oh my god.
More and more human characters that nobody cared about as those movies went on. I'm like, this movie already goes for 3.5 hours. Cut some of these humans out. Like, we don't need any of them. I know this is not a Transformers podcast, but a couple of other things on Transformers. Yeah, that first one, I quite enjoy that first one as kind of a guilty pleasure movie. Like, I feel like that was a movie I watched a lot of times when I was hungover on DVD back in the day. And they got progressively worse. I think the good thing about the first one is most of the characters were somewhat likable. They hadn't been taken to the point of being really awful yet in that one. And the Transformers themselves, I think you're right about the transforming aspect. But in that one, the Transformers all looked distinct. Like, they had their own colors, whereas I feel like in the later movies, sometimes it's hard to tell which Transformer was which.
Yes.
Because they were all, especially the bad guys, were all just grey. Whereas in that first one, you had like the police car, and you had like Optimus Prime, who's clearly the red and blue one, and you have Bumblebee, who's clearly the yellow one, and like they all had kind of their own color scheme. I feel like a bit more in that first one, and then they got a bit more realistic, I guess, as they went on. So then they look more like realistic vehicles,
which was stupid. Yeah.
And they look less and less like it until we got to Bumblebee, which I actually thought was a fantastic movie.
I liked it when I finally watched it. I got around to it. I was like, this movie is fine. What are people talking about? Like,
I would have much rather. I think that movie, my understanding is it had the best critical reception and the worst like financial gains. Like, it was
nobody saw it.
Nobody saw it. Which I think
after watching the which one, the first Mark Wahlberg one or whatever, people were just like, we're done with this. Like,
yes. And I remember seeing it with a friend of mine and we saw pretty much all of them, except for the last night. I didn't see that until a lot later, which I think was maybe one of the last ones. But each time we'd see it, and there was almost a part of us that really wanted to enjoy them, and we'd be like, you know what? I think that was better than the last one. And then we'd have some time to kind of process, and we'd talk again like 2 weeks later, and we're like, I've been thinking more about it. Like, Optimus Prime is like really bloodthirsty in that one. And by the end of it, we're like, no, that was much worse than the previous one. We just wanted to like them, and they were new, and there was that excitement that maybe they're going to get it right this time. And then by the time we got to Bumblebee, they didn't even see that. I saw it. And it took me a really long time to convince them that it was worth watching, because they're like, no, this is the same thing you always do, Brendan. You say it was better than the last one, and then we watch it and it's not better.
I mean, I waited until Bumblebee was on TV for like a year. And then finally one day I was bored and I was like, fine, I'll look at it. And I was like, oh, this is good.
I saw it at the cinema because, and again, I'm just a mark for these things, I think. But I saw it at the cinema and I was like so happy. Like, I remember just watching it, and like, it's set in the 80s, which is my favorite period for movies to be set in. I like Haley Steinfeld in it. I liked all the cast were good. It was basically the story of Transformers 1 again, but better, like with better actors and more likable people.
Exactly.
And Transformers that looked more like the characters that they were in the cartoons and the toys. But man, I just love Bumblebee so much when I watched it. And like, it's maybe not as much, it's not even as good maybe as I feel like I think it is. But it was just such a pleasant surprise to see a Transformers movie that I didn't have to feel uncomfortable about. And there were no like weird racial jokes, and there were no like Bumblebee peeing on people, and there was just like no uncomfortable elements in it. It was just like a nice, wholesome, enjoyable Transformers movie.
Yeah.
John Cena kind of being John Cena in there, and he was a lot of fun. Just, yeah. I'm sure you weren't going to get to Bumblebee, so there's my review of Bumblebee. I know we're supposed to be talking about Masters of the Universe, but I loved Bumblebee.
I'll have to give it another watch because I think I've only seen it once. And like I said, this would have been a couple of years ago now. So I mean, I have nothing against it. I remember watching it and having the exact same thing. I was like, oh, that was good. Okay,
yeah, it's actually
I'm
good.
shocked. Yeah, pleasantly surprised. And then I think I tried to watch last night, which was also on TV, and I almost pulled all of my eyes out. And I was like, what is this nonsense? Like, I can't do this.
Yeah, last night was pretty bad. I think I've only watched that one once. And actually, to be honest, I think I've only watched most of them apart from the first one and Bumblebee once. I feel like I watched them at the cinema. Last night I did watch on DVD, and I feel like I never watched them again. Like, I was like,
there's no need to. That's the thing. Yeah.
Funnily enough, I have quite a few of the toys from the movies because quite a few of the designs I did like. Like, I have Grimlock, and I have a lot of the Bumblebee ones. I do like the Transformers quite a bit in those movies. I just don't like any part of the movie.
Yeah.
So they were. I guess that relates. It's a toy property movie, very much like Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Masters of the Universe, they jumped on the success of creating your own brand and then selling it to kids based on cartoons and stuff like that, right? So, I mean, Transformers did it because Masters of the Universe,
very much like Masters of the Universe, they missed the point of why people liked the originals, and they felt the need to add a lot of new stuff that probably didn't need to be there.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think this is one of the reasons why the movie flopped so badly, is because so much stuff that people know to be He-Man was missing, and the story just didn't make sense. You're just like, you're watching it, you're like, this isn't He-Man. Why are you here? Who's these people? What's going on? It was just a very different everything, because I know the comic books were a lot more serious than the cartoon, fine, but you still have to make it in their world, and it just wasn't in their world. Whether it's a budgetary thing or not, you would have to find some other way to put it in the proper space with these characters, and they didn't. They just went completely outside of it, lost their audience, and just didn't put out something good.
Yeah, and it seems like they could have got it filmed largely in fields and deserts and probably still done, like, it probably still wouldn't have cost that much. Like, they probably could have used the budget in a more sensible way, maybe, and done that. It's an interesting one because we talked about when it came out and it probably missed for a lot of people. I know there are a lot of people that Masters of the Universe movie did really appeal to, and they were Masters of the Universe fans, and I think they were happy to get a Masters of the Universe movie. And even though it wasn't what they were looking for, it was kind of, we all have those movies that are meaningful for that we see when we're kids. And I feel like for a lot, there are like quite a few people that I know that Masters of the Universe maybe is that for them. So like for me, that was movies like Ghostbusters, and I think this, and maybe Ninja Turtles, some of those Gremlins, those kinds of things. I think there were people that Masters of the Universe really did connect with, despite maybe even for them not being super true to the cartoon or the toys or whatever, that it was still something that they were just happy to have. And it was not, and we haven't had another live action He-Man. We've had a lot of cancelled live action He-Man stuff,
which
I
is
think.
so disappointing. Yes.
Yeah.
Because they did do that Netflix thing last year that was actually pretty good. I kind of liked it. Cool. Yeah.
And they seem to be, and Netflix seems to be the one person, I think, at least on the media side of things, trying to do stuff with Masters of the Universe. They did that with the Kevin Smith animated one. They did the animated series that's more aimed at kids as well that recently came out. So it's like a CGI one. Okay. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's pretty good. Like it's aimed at kids, obviously, but apparently it's quite fun. And they did the She-Ra series before that, which I know stuff, but I hear really, really good things, and the bits I've seen were really good. So I think there are people kind of championing that brand. We just haven't quite got that live action one again yet. And I think they've even cast people and stuff over the years. It just hasn't quite worked out, unfortunately. So this is, for now, the live action Masters of the Universe that we have. It's almost impossible to find someone to watch it in Australia. That was the biggest part of that I had. I had to sign up to MGM's streaming service through Amazon Prime. So through Amazon Prime, I can sign up to MGM. Have I guess I didn't know this was a thing, but they had like a sub channel that I could sign up to through Amazon Prime. That was the only way I could find to watch Masters of the Universe in Australia.
Yeah, I was very happy my DVD worked, because it was the same thing here. You'd have to like sign up through 3 different things to get to it, and I was just like, oh my god, please work! Yay!
I would have probably even bought it, but I'm not sure how much of a wide release it got on DVD here. I feel like it would have come out. I remember going to a DVD store that was kind of like a specialty one where DVDs were like still really big, and being blown away to find Howard the Duck and Super Mario Brothers. And I feel like Masters of the Universe maybe probably got a release from that same company that released those 2 movies. But
it was Warner Brothers, by the way.
Okay, yeah. And I think it only probably got a fairly small release here. I don't remember ever seeing it on DVD, because I think I would have bought it, because it was one of those movies I did watch a lot as a kid. I don't know if I told this story the last time I was on your podcast, but I stayed with my grandparents a lot because my parents worked, and also my grandparents had electricity, so I liked it there. And one of the things we would do is go and visit my auntie. And going and visiting my auntie was fine, but she had this wardrobe that was full of pirated videotapes. What I now understand to be pirated videotapes, and Masters of the Universe was one of the ones that she had. So it was one of the ones that I would regularly borrow and rewatch. Yeah. So I think that's why it still like appeals to me quite a bit. No, I think that it appealed to me as a kid, and there is some nostalgia, even though I hadn't watched it for a long time. Going back to it, I did it, and I didn't remember it, but I did enjoy it. Overall, like, I enjoyed the experience of rewatching it. I think overall, maybe it's not the world's best movie, certainly not the world's best He-Man movie, but as someone that enjoys kind of 80s mid-budget action stuff, that likes fantasy and likes optical effects. Like I enjoyed the visual effects and all the red beams and lightning on Skeletor, and there's a part of me that is really nostalgic for that era of film. So even if I'm not specifically nostalgic for this film, I enjoyed going back to it and I enjoyed watching it. And I enjoyed the scene of Gwildor covered in gravy in a bush. That was the only one that stood out to me. So overall, like, I had fun with it.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. I have a crazy soft spot for this movie, obviously. And I watched this movie. I used to watch the movie all the time. And when I was watching it, I remembered all of it. I just found it came across so much more disjointed and choppy than I remembered. So to me, a lot of the story was just like, it just seemed all over the place. Like, why are you here? How come you're over there now? What's going on over here? What's with this guy? Why are we back in a music shop? What's going on? You know, like it was a lot of like jumpy things happening in there that just kind of went all over the place. And there was no like character building. There was no like, there seemed to be no real, like there was an urgency, but everybody seemed to be taking their time still, if you know what I mean. It was just like,
there was a lot of
what are
sitting
you
around.
doing? There was a lot of sitting around.
In warehouses and alleys, largely, and other places that they could hide bushes. Anywhere that was cheap to film, but that they could sit for a while and make this movie feature length. But that was a problem. And I kind of said, I guess, that the story worked. The more that you talk about it, the more I'm kind of recognizing that maybe it didn't. And maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because really, all you needed was He-Man's escape to, like, even if you want to do the Earth storyline, you say He-Man's escape to Earth, Skeletor's trying to get him to get something, and we don't need all of the other back and forth. Like, we don't need all of those different things. But just like, He-Man's here, maybe he needs to get back to save his world. Skeletor needs to get to him because he needs this thing he needs to conquer the world. And that's really all. That's enough reason to both be on Earth.
Well, and I think that's the problem. Like, they tried to put too much story into it. Like, if you just make it just really basic, straight line, He-Man has a thing, Skeletor wants it back, and we're going to drain power from the sorceress. Actually, that part isn't even necessary, to be honest. Like, he just wants the sword. Sure, whatever. Just like,
him getting power from the sorceress didn't actually do anything. He was still easily able to fight him in combat.
Because all his power went into his staff for some reason. So when you broke it, it went back. I don't.
Where he had a force field.
Yeah,
but that disappeared later on when they went back to the throne room again. That a lot disappeared in the room.
Yeah, there were just so many questions. Like, so many questions. Like, but I think the questions are there because it was just so unnecessary. You know, it's like, and I think that's why, like, I'm going to put this with John Wick, for example, like the first John Wick movie, where people are just like, dude's going to kill this guy because he killed his dog. That was it. That was the whole movie.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And it worked because at the end of the movie, you don't have questions. You're like, oh, the guy's part of the mafia or whatever, or he's part of an assassin. Sure. But that's not part of the story. You're like, no, he's doing what he needs to do to kill this guy who killed his dog. That is it. That's the whole movie. And yes, the other John Wick movies are entertaining, but they're not as good as the first one because they're trying to put too much story. So at the end of it, you're just like, this doesn't make any sense because of all of this other stuff. So there's too many questions. So if they made the Masters of the Universe movie simpler, by the end of it would have been like, okay, He-Man won, we're done. And you'd have been happy about it. But because they put so much stuff into it, you're just like, it doesn't make sense because you're forgetting of all these 12 things.
And I think you're right. I know I was making fun of like Tiller having no development, but at the same time, that wasn't a huge problem for this movie. Like, they could have gone with a simpler story. I don't think anyone came to Masters of the Universe looking for a complex story anyway. I don't think that's what people wanted. And maybe they could have just given people some more character moments, some more of those iconic creatures and things, even if they were only for like blink and you miss it cameos or scenes or whatever. I think if they'd spent less time on like you say, music shops and exploding microwaves and all of those things, they could have maybe given people a bit more of what they actually probably wanted from it anyway.
Yeah. Or the thing that always confused me. I did forget about this scene. So the part where they first activate the key and Evelyn locates it on Earth, and then they full on like Google Maps zoom in on like the house or whatever. And you're just like, wait, what? How is, first of all, before I continue, MapQuest, Google, whatever, didn't exist. So the fact that this was happening made no sense. And second of all, even if they had like the technology to do it, who has a telescope from a separate galaxy that can zoom in that close on a building, on a random planet, on a solar system, however many light years away?
And at the same time, this technology is jammed if someone turns a microwave on.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm
sure and when they're on the
Earth
same planet too.
Yeah, I'm sure there was, even if he wasn't running the microwave, I'm sure someone around was probably using a microwave at some point. Yeah, it was weird because, again, it didn't add anything really, except that they knew where he was. But they just sort of knew that anyway. Like, they didn't, I guess, and it was played, I guess it was an opportunity to play a joke, like have it played as a joke, that, the microwave blocks the thing, and then it blows up. They blow up the microwave. But it wasn't really funny. It wasn't really, like, I don't know if it was being played as a joke. I think if it had been a bit more done that way, maybe it would have been better. But, yeah.
Yeah, no, it just, like, this is one of those movies, at certain points, it takes itself too seriously. But then at other points, it doesn't take itself seriously enough. And you're just like, what balance are you looking for here? Like, what level of entertainment are you trying to go for? Like, what do you want? Do you want us to be like, tense action? Oh my God, he blew something up. Or do you want us to be like, haha, that's really funny. Like what level do you want?
Yeah. And there are a lot of things going on. I think that's what we can probably both agree on with this movie. There are a lot of things happening in it. I think there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we see elements of in the movie as well. But we don't necessarily understand 100% without knowing the full context of what was going on in the background. But we should see elements of that, like that final fight being just, they needed to shoot an ending. And so they did it in the cheapest way that they could do it.
Way possible,
because there are earlier parts of the movie where, like, those earlier parts on Eternia look pretty good, I think. And, like, the matte paintings of Grayskull and, like, some nice stuff early on. Like, it does set up that kind of, it's very much that 80s cheaper end of town fantasy, but it does it sells that fantasy pretty well. And then that disappears.
Very quickly. Like, it disappears so quickly. It's like 10 minutes.
And then we're on Earth. And then when we return, we only see the throne room. Even when we see the guy like settling into his new home on Eternia, he's sitting in the throne room.
Beside the sorceress for some reason. Like, what are you now? Like, what is your position? Do you have are you some high level sorcerer now? Like, what's your job? Are you a protector of the sorceress? Like, what is happening? It's a lot. There's a lot of questions this leaves you with. And that's the problem with it, I think. Yeah. I do hope they finally get around to doing another movie, though. Like, I
do too.
I need them to do it. Yeah.
We need Battle Cat if we get a live action Masters Universe movie. Otherwise, just we want Battle Cat. We want a man riding a giant green tiger, or we don't want. Or at
don't
least,
want anything.
I'm not going to speak for everyone. I don't want it if it doesn't have a man riding a giant green tiger.
Even if it's just like Cringer in the background and just shows up afterwards, Battle Cat, you don't have to do his transformation on screen. Fine, I get it, but we need to see it happen. Okay, he's got to have the big saddle and everything. This has to happen. Yeah. I'm down for it.
We pretty much covered that one.
I think so. We have been intensely picking apart at it for the last hour.
Because, like I say, I know it's a movie that's meaningful to some people. And I know it's a movie that overall I still had a good time watching. But looking at it critically, it's not a very good.
No, like you cannot put this in front of fresh eyes. You can't.
Yes.
If you put this in front of fresh eyes, people will fight you. They'll be like, "What is wrong with you? This is not good. What are you talking about? Look at this. Look at these. Like we were talking about the part where they're on like the flying discs or whatever, where it looks like action figures. They just tilt sideways and like cut into the picture. Like it's pretty bad, even for that time period. But as something that you grew up with and something that you know about, like you understand the background of it, stick with it. It's fine.
Yeah. If you enjoyed it as a kid, watch it again. If you didn't watch it before, just maybe give it a miss.
It's unnecessary. I mean, unless you're getting into the He-Man She-Ra fandom and you're like, you watched all the new stuff and you're gonna watch the classic cartoon. And if you can get through the classic cartoon, fine. But yeah, you can give this. Or
if you're into those if you're a film nerd and you're into those kind of 80s kind of low budget fantasy, like if you enjoyed Willow, if you enjoyed,
you cannot say bad things about Willow. I'm sorry.
I haven't watched it since I was a kid. But I feel like it's not. Again, it's not the top end of town fantasy. Krull, those kinds of movies where there's fantasy elements, but they're spacey. If you like those things and you are okay with and you enjoy those kind of older effects and those kinds of things, I think there's stuff to enjoy here. But I think the average person that you just like seeing movies that are new at the cinema, you're gonna hate it. It's not gonna be. It's not gonna be a cup of tea.
It's so true.
Like go watch a new Marvel movie or something like that. You're gonna have a way better time than you're gonna have with something like this.
I don't know. I saw Thor: Love and Thunder, and that was difficult.
You didn't like
that one was difficult for me, and I was just like, "Oh, they're really dropping the ball here."
I thought it was. I did think it was one of the weaker ones. I enjoyed aspects of it quite a bit, but overall as a movie, I don't know that it. I don't think it. The pacing was really weird, and it just a lot of stuff didn't connect very well together for me. A lot of the individual parts were cool, but then.
But I think the problem is like they're leaning too hard into the humor or trying to lean too hard into the humor. And how Taika Waititi does it is that he does a lot of like improv and stuff, and it comes across. Whereas, the Marvel universe is set up in a way where things are precise for a reason so that everything connects in a certain way. And you can tell, I'm like, oh, this scene is clearly improv. No, they had to say these specific things here. This part is improv. Like you can pick out those areas. And it was frustrating to me because the parts that were improv, you're just like, there's too much chatter and there's too much nothing happening. Like, can we just keep going? This would be great.
It's hard for me because those bits are simultaneously what makes the movie not work, but also some of my favorite bits. Like and I think maybe, I don't know, I think it could have been fixed. Like maybe if they'd had Korg, because Korg's the narrator, so everything technically is from his point of view, but they didn't play that up enough. Because I think if they played up more that Korg was telling the story, then some of that goofier stuff works better because it's Korg's retelling versus what actually happened. And I think there was some sort of bits where that didn't work, because I think there were bits where it worked really well. Like there's the scene where Christian Bale just lost his child, and it's like quite powerful. Mm-hmm. And then you get this god that just doesn't care. Like I think that contrast there made that first scene even more powerful.
Oh, but again, I agree with you. When it started and that scene played, I was like, that is like not awesome as in like, yay, she's dead. No, but like it was such a good juxtaposition. Like, and you can see where his anger comes from because of it. Like he's feeling all this grief and he's being ignored and in this bright place and blah, 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 blah. Like I got it. Like you understood where he was coming from because of how intensely juxtaposed it was.
And there was some
And
of the cancer story bits with Jane Foster where,
yeah.
like, I legitimately teared up at times. Like, I think it was like 2/3 of the way of being something really special,
Mhm.
but then it just, I don't know what it was, because in a way it's not that different to Ragnarok, which I think Ragnarok just worked so much better. But and there's so many good bits, like, and I really like the end scene with like all the spoilers if you haven't seen Thor. That, like, the end scene with all the kids,
Mhm.
like all the Asgardian kids, and he gave them his power. Like, I liked all of that stuff. There's so much in that movie that I enjoyed, but I agree it didn't quite. It as a cohesive movie, it didn't quite work.
No,
It
yeah.
was it, which was a shame because I had kind of really, but I had quite high expectations. I love Taika Waititi. I loved Ragnarok. I love Chris Hemsworth. Like, I was expecting a lot, and maybe I was a bit harsher on it. Although after the movie, like, I enjoyed myself. I just didn't think it was as good as it probably could have been or should have been.
Yes. Like there were definitely a couple of scenes where I was like, this is really funny, or like that's really cool and blah blah blah. But at the end of the movie, I walked out and I was just like, what? Okay, okay. Like just that's
Yeah.
just how I felt. I was like,
And,
okay.
and simultaneously, we're getting like Ms. Marvel on TV, which I thought was like a fantastic show.
I did
Like, I
not
was,
like the ending, but I liked it
uh,
overall.
yeah, I think the ending, and I think maybe that's been a bit of a problem with some of their shows generally. Like, they resolve things quite quickly, and but I think in terms of just like setting up that character, and like the whole show wasn't out yet. We'd really only got those kind of early episodes when I saw Thor, and it's just like, oh man, like, you're just nailing it here. Like this story about this family is so beautiful, and like, I'm loving all that casting here. And I mean, I love the casting in Thor, to be fair. Like, that wasn't the problem.
No.
But yeah, it just maybe, I don't know, maybe did Taika have just a little bit too much creative control, and maybe did he just need someone to rein him in just a little bit?
I'm
Like,
nodding. I'm agreeing. Yes.
yeah, I wonder if maybe that's the difference between Ragnarok. Maybe he had a few more limitations, and for this one they said go crazy. And Taika has made fantastic films. Like, overall, like Jojo Rabbit, Boy, Hunt for the Wilder People, all amazing movies that I really love. But they're smaller movies, and they're not trying to also fit into this cohesive world, and they're not doing all that other stuff that Marvel is doing. And
Yeah,
so
because
maybe
they're trying to progress not just Thor's story, but a bunch of stories around it, and like in this
exactly,
world, and it has to fit in with the rest of the storytelling. And there's nothing wrong, like with Ragnarok, which a lot of I enjoy the movie, but the movie's pointless. It's just there's no reason for it. It's pointless. Anyways, people are gonna hate me. It's fine, but it's an enjoyable movie to watch. I enjoy watching it. And then you think about it, you're just like, what was the point of that? Nothing. Anyways, but
to
like
get Hulk and Thor in the right place for the beginning of Infinity War.
that, right? They just had to explain why they were missing from like the last battle,
Yeah,
and like what is it, Civil War was right before that, I think.
yeah.
So it's like, why were they
It a lot of
missing?
gaps,
Yeah.
and actually maybe is why maybe that worked better for Taika. I think that maybe this is the point that you're making as well, is that one, it didn't matter as much.
It didn't.
Like, and maybe Thor at that point wasn't in the best place. He wasn't one of the A tier characters. Like, Thor 2 didn't do that well, so they were kind of able to maybe get away with a bit more. And then we got like some really cool Thor stuff in the like Infinity War Endgame. We got some more growth, and it does. I mean, I think they explained his character progression, regression, because probably more of a regression at the beginning of Love and Thunder, but that he's kind of gone back to not caring that much, and he's kind of a bit more to that earlier Thor again. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It just didn't. I think we both agree it didn't work. I think maybe less for you than for me. I think I maybe enjoyed it a bit more than you did by the sound of it. But I think most people, like even my friends who are big Marvel fans, who are big Taika fans as well, this isn't their favorite, and it's
No.
probably not going to be their favorite.
No. It's not going to be anybody's favorite as far as
we can get misses every now and again, and
yes.
it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the problem is that they were also having the DC problem where they were just getting too serious. They're like, let's throw in something fun and light and silly. Because even with the TV shows, like you have like Moon Knight was pretty heavy, WandaVision was pretty heavy. What was the other one? Loki. Even though there was a lot of like antics and silliness in it, by the end of it was very heavy.
Yeah, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, fairly political, and like really, I think of the TV shows prior to Ms. Marvel, and I mean Ms. Marvel has a lot of it has a lot to say. It's a lighter show, but it has a lot to say, I think, about the world. I think really the only kind of light action adventure TV show that we've got in the new MCU is Hawkeye, which was just fun. It was
a lot of fun,
But yeah, like say we have had a lot of heavier stuff, and I've heard people make complaints that like post Endgame the MCU is really struggling. I don't know that I'd go that far. We've had No Way Home. We've had a lot of great shows. We've had Shang-Chi that I thought was really good. Yeah. Like we've had even like Doctor Strange, maybe not the best Marvel movie, but a fun watch. Like it's not in this terrible place that I think some people might have you believe that.
No, it's not as floundering as people think it is. I think the problem is they're currently doing a lot of filler as they're trying to build their
they're building up to the next
so
big story.
But they're trying also not to do mainly origin stories either. So it seems like it might be coming out of nowhere, but to me it's clear what they're doing. It's but after all of this time, when you've already done all of these properties and you always have to put all these things together, you're gonna have movies like Eternals, and you're gonna have movies like this one where you're just like,
and even Eternals, Eternals, I think to me it felt like a bit of a like I don't think anyone was asking for it. Like I don't really know what it necessarily adds to the overall MCU. I thought as a movie on its own, it was entertaining enough. Like I've watched it, I didn't hate it. Like it was all right. I think really Eternals and Thor were clearly the two bigger misses of this kind of generation. And even Thor, like I'm excited to see what happens next for Thor with where that movie ends up. Like so, even if the next time we see him is just Avengers or something like that, it's still going to be cool to see how some of the things that happened in that movie continue forward. So like it's not, I think it's just one of those misses. We write it off as a miss. It's like Thor 2. We remember that movie existed. It was fine.
A lot of people hate Thor 2 a lot more than I do. I don't think it's that bad. It's definitely not great. But it gets a lot more hate than I think it deserves. Just like the first Captain America movie, the first Avenger. People say that movie's bad, and I'm just like, what are you
that movie is 100% not bad. It's a bit like the first Thor as well, really good. Like people rate it lower, and I think it's a thing that people insist on rating things. And I mean, we're on a podcast where we talk about movies and how good or bad they are. But people insist on rating things, and that means that some things have to be towards the bottom, and it doesn't mean that they're horrible. And even the worst of the MCU, I don't think it has been that bad. Like I would still watch most of those movies and not turn them off if they were on TV. Like
even the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time. I can't. I won't say for sure on that one. I don't know. But like Iron Man 2 again is one that I think is a bit weak. Like Iron Man 2, I think was very much a similar thing that they were also maybe doing with some of these more recent ones. Is they're trying to do a bit too much and set up a bit too much at times. And as a movie, it doesn't work as well as it does as a step towards the next thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes a problem that they were dodging pretty well. I think they had some problems with that early on, then they dodged it really well up until Endgame. And I think now, because they're bringing in new characters but also setting things up, they're finding some of those early problems that they had maybe again. But I don't know, and not everything can be amazing. Not everything can be the world's greatest movie. And I'd still say that overall, when I see a Marvel movie, even if it's a weak one, I don't come out of there being like I wasted my money. Like I'm like, oh, that was fun. Typically, like that, I was entertained enough, and the good ones, like the really good ones, are worth it. Like they're worth the odd weak one. Yeah. Like I don't mind. Like it's even things like Amazing Spider-Man 2 is better because No Way Home exists. Like because we got No Way Home. Like we wouldn't have got some of those things that came through without Amazing Spider-Man 2. So
that is true.
All of these things in this universe play a part, and some are weaker than others. But
I agree with everything that you're saying for the most part. Yes.
Speaking about weak movies, should we get on to the next one?
Mars Attacks, yes. We're also talking about like B movies and cheesy things and blah, blah, blah. Yes. This is a movie that is an homage to all of those things. Like I brought up Ed Wood earlier on, and Tim Burton is just like, Mars Attacks is just me loving Ed Wood. Here you go. Yeah. Even though I already made a movie, Ed Wood, about it, I had to do more. Like, and that's just what he did.
Mars Attacks, when you were, maybe a peek behind the curtain for how Tracy's show works, she sent out some of the movies that she was going to be doing this year and asked who might be interested in talking about them. And I had watched Mars Attacks the day before you sent that out. And I was like, yeah, definitely. And I saw Masters of the Universe, so I was excited for that. And I was like, and Mars Attacks, like this will be an easy one. I've just watched it. Like I won't even need to watch it again before the podcast. I watched that movie. That was probably like 3-4 months ago. I don't know. I could remember nothing about that movie before I had to watch it again because I could remember nothing about it. And I've watched it again, and I could already feel it disappearing from my brain. It has so little impact. Like that's just I don't know.
Really, I don't know. I remember. Like watching it, I realized I remembered a lot from this movie. Like a lot.
I remember a lot of the Martian bits.
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot of the characters and the character bits and the.
It's more like I remembered there was a crap load of celebrities in it than I remembered what their actual characters were.
So, Michael J. Fox, one of my favorite all-time actors. I watched the movie 4 months ago. I forgot Michael J. Fox was in the movie.
He's only in like a quarter of the movie.
He is just weirdly killed pretty quickly.
You actually don't even, and apparently, like this was his last movie. Like not the last thing he's filmed. Like he was on TV and did interviews and all that kind of stuff after. But like this is his last like movie that he did.
And in fairness, not knowing the behind the scenes, maybe there was potentially more for him to do initially, and he wasn't able to do it. I'm not sure, and I don't want to. Because when he's there, he's great. He's one of the better actors in the movie, I think. But he's just not got a lot to do. He disappears pretty quickly.
Yeah, but is he like a better actor, or is it the fact that they were meant to like everybody just hammed it up? Because there's a lot of good actors in it, like Jack Nicholson's in there, Glenn Close. You got Annette Bedding.
I think there's not a lot of good acting. I think he was able to pull it off, and I think he has the charisma to pull it off. And his character was reminiscent of like even a bit reminiscent of is it Alex from Family Ties?
Yes.
Yeah. There were parts of him that we've seen before, and I liked. He was just kind of like the jerk media news guy. He wasn't as over the top as some of the other characters, and I think maybe that's why I like him a bit better in it. So do you like the actors in this movie? I like the actors in this movie in other movies.
Okay. So I loved this movie when it came out. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it did what it was meaning to do, give homage to B movies and all this kind of stuff. I thought it was great. And again, I don't hate it. But again, on this watch, I had to pay too much actual attention to it. And I was just like, certain scenes, I was like, oh my God, can we just keep going?
Yeah, I found it so painfully slow.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, can we get to the next Martian bit? Because the Martians are cool. I had some issues getting the copy I was trying to watch to work as well initially.
Yeah.
So I watched that scene of the cows on fire about 20 times trying to get it to work. But like that stuff really fun, really cool. Anytime that the Martians were there, it was good. My issue was just everyone else in the movie I found so boring. And I think that's why I don't retain any aspects of this movie. So I've watched it a few times over the year, and I quite like Mars Attacks, the property. Like, that because I don't know how much you're aware of it, but it's like based on trading cards.
Yeah, the Topps trading cards. That was just it was only put out for a while because it didn't do well, and they like got rid of it.
So I have the reprints of the entire series of Mars trading cards. So they've reprinted them as this little book, and they talk about it in the book that it was they were basically taken off the shelves. They were too violent, and they weren't. And when you look at them, like they're not like Garbage Pail Kids, which was the other Topps trading card or stickers, I guess in that case, but like the other kind of thing that they were doing where it was gross or whatever, but it's tongue in cheek. Whereas that it was just violent. Like there's just it's just like images of people getting burnt up and things like that. Like which and a lot of those images are in the movie as well. Like a lot of those, there were no giant bugs, which was a later part of the later trading cards, but there were a lot of the other things that you see, like the big robot walker thing and the cows on fire. I feel like there's a trading card for that. The dog getting disintegrated. That's a trading card.
So hold on. Okay. The thing about trading cards are usually like they have a picture on the front, at the back there's like stats or a story, just something on the back of it to make the image on the front of it make sense. Yes. What is on the back of these cards? Are they stats? Is it like a background story? Like what is
background story? And it's like I can't show the viewers, but I can describe one. So on the back there's a number, and then and each card has a name, so it's got a picture and a name. And then on the back, there's a number, and then basically that tells you the order to read them in. So it's an overall story that it's a continuous story. It's not anything particularly deep. It's basically the story that the movie is in a lot of ways. I don't think them beating them with music is in the cards, but largely it's the story of the movie just told in like trading card form. So
okay,
they're quite wordy. Like the whole back
there's a lot in there. I find it interesting though, but see, this would frustrate me about these cards in particular is that if you're missing a card, you're missing part of your story, and you're like, you get to the next card, and you're just like, wait, what? So what?
Especially if they're taken off the shelves halfway through collecting them, and you can't get them.
You can't get them anymore.
Here's card number 3. It's just called Attacking an Army Base. So they're not clever or funny like Garbage Pail Kids are. And the picture is literally just a whole bunch of soldiers on fire, being disintegrated. There's some skeletons. Like it's just
my god,
quite violent.
That is intense.
You can see why it didn't work as a card line, and so it's become quite valuable now because it was one of those card lines that I guess they probably chucked a lot of the leftover cards away.
Yeah.
It's so much so, like, I quite like Mars Attacks. I enjoy the cards for what they are, and I just enjoy that exists and that they were marketing these. Not that I think we should market violence to children, but that they were marketing these like horribly violent cards because there's some really horribly violent ones. And so I think maybe one of the worst ones is called Destroying a Dog. So it's there's a trading card, number 36, Destroying a Dog. And recently, the toy company Super 7 released some Mars Attacks action figures.
Yeah.
And they released Destroying a Dog as an action figure. So I've got it right here for some show and tell. And again, unfortunately, I can't show it to the people at home, but I can describe it. It's the trading card, which is a Martian blasting a hole in a dog. The dog looks shocked. The dog has a shocked impression on his face, while assumably the owner, a young boy, runs screaming towards the Martian. And then the toy comes with an action figure of the Martian himself, but also a dog with a hole in it.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
So this was what Mars Attacks, I guess, was prior to the movie.
So I just want to say one of my few notes for this movie is they killed the dog because when they break into the president's suite, the dog barks and they shoot the dog. I guess it's directly from the cards. Like
it is. It's straight. I think there was straight up an homage to the cards, and I think so many of those kind of sequences are straight from the trading cards. I'm not. I was planning to have a look back through before we talked. I didn't have time. Wanted to see if the lady in disguise, that like disguise of the lady, was in there or not, because I don't remember that. That feels to me about maybe that's a Tim Burton thing.
Yeah, that he threw in there.
Yeah, but overall, like so much of it, after reading the book and looking through the trading cards and then watching the movie, so many of the actual kind of set piece bits are straight from the cards, which I think is really cool. I think in the movie they're far less graphic. They've done it in a more cheesy way.
Yeah, I think the like if they took it seriously, it could have been very like violent and gross.
Way too violent, I think.
Yeah, but
what it was.
The tongue-in-cheekiness and the B movie quality and the overacting made it fine. Yeah,
yes.
Like I mean, not like the part where they see the brother on TV get vaporized and the family fully is just like in shock. I was just like, that's horrible. Like you don't like the character. They're like, he deserves it. Yeah.
That's the weirdest Jack Black role I've ever seen. Like it's so out of character for him.
So out of character, yeah. It was just like there's a couple of things in there that you're just like, what is going on?
So most of the time it's like red skeleton, green skeleton. Like that's largely what happens when people get hit. They get turned into the skeletons. The one for me was when she bites off the guy's thumb and then spits it into the fish tank. Because that was the only time it felt like real violence to me in the whole movie. Like every other time it was like goofy guns and blasters and fun stuff like that. And then out of the blue, she bites this guy's finger off.
Yeah, it was like very visceral and very intense. Yeah. I looked up who played her, and it's this woman named Lisa Marie. And I didn't realize it, but she's in like all of the Tim Burton movies, which I thought was
really
kind of crazy.
I didn't recognize her, and I know the name Lisa Marie, even I think, but I couldn't say what else from.
Yeah, she's like in Sleepy Hollow. She plays like does she play Crane's mom? I think she plays Ichabod Crane's mom.
She in Edward Scissorhands. I think she might be in Edward Scissorhands. Actually,
she's not in Edward Scissorhands.
She's
in Ed Wood. She's in Mars Attacks. She's in Sleepy Hollow. Yeah, she's Crane's mom. You know, the one that ends up dying in the Iron Maiden.
Sort of. It's been a very long time since I saw that movie.
Well, I watch Sleepy Hollow pretty regularly, actually.
Oh, cool. I think it was.
I love it.
I liked it, but I can't remember the last time I saw it. Yeah.
She was in His Planet of the Apes. What else was she in? I think that was it.
And that's pretty common for him.
Half of them, yeah.
Actor, he does reuse actors quite a lot. So
yeah, but she's got like a very like structural face that's works with this kind of like exaggerated makeup to make you look kind of like creepy. So she worked really well.
Role, she was really good. Yeah, sort of otherworldly. Like she and the way she moves. Like I think that's one of the things that she does really well. And I think generally that's what I think this movie does really well is all of that kind of larger than life sort of alien stuff. The stuff for me that it didn't do so well is try to make you care about any of the other characters pretty much in the movie. Like, there's the guy. So also weirdly, Jack Nicholson plays two characters.
He does.
Which I didn't really realize the first time. So he plays the president, which I think he does a pretty good job of. And I think he's one of the better characters in the movie. And then he plays Tiger King as well.
For no reason. You're like, all right.
Like this casino guy. And who has nothing to do with the main story. Like his other characters around him do. But he's just like, it's all about him building this hotel that just gets immediately destroyed.
Yeah.
And there's like bits where he's trying to get I can't think what the guy's name is, but the boxer who works at the casino. He's played
by Jim Brown. It's Byron Williams.
Byron. Yeah, he's good as well. Like I really quite like him. But he's trying to like get him to like hurt a guy that owes him money, and it just doesn't go anywhere. Like it doesn't resolve in the movie. Even little things like that are a bit unclear. Like I was under the impression that Byron and his wife had got a divorce, but doesn't seem like that then at the end. Like, well,
he said like throughout the movie, he says things were getting like they got a divorce. She moved with her kids, and they were, things were going good, and he's trying to get back together with him. That's why she's going. He was like his whole thing was, I'm planning to fly out tomorrow to come see you, and then the aliens
attack. This is how quickly it leaves my memory in this movie, because I watched it and I wrote notes. I was trying to keep track of things even, and I was still struggling to retain bits of it. But I liked him, but just so much of his story didn't go anywhere. I liked his wife, but she didn't get really much to do. Except
Pam Grier, and she's an amazing actress. Yeah,
she didn't get much to do though, apart from yell at her kids, which in that fun scene when she stops the bus. That was a fun scene. And she set up like that her kids like the video games, and then there's the cool stuff later where they're using the guns. Like those characters were pretty good. I mean, no one's really bad. It's just nothing amounts to anything. I think that's my problem.
But I think that's the problem when you have a movie that has so many characters in it, right?
Yeah.
And apparently, like, they cut characters. Like, it's supposed to be many more characters.
Oh, really? Yeah.
But that like they cut down the amount of people that were going to be in there. I feel like Tim Burton just called all his friends. He's like, "Hey, want to be a movie?" And they're like, "Okay," and they showed up and they did their thing and they went home. Like that's just what happened. That's what it feels like. Yeah,
yeah. Even like Jack Nicholson's Tiger King character, he's just like, it feels like Jack Nicholson just wanted to do that, and he wanted Jack Nicholson to be the president. He said, "Yeah, if you be the president, you can also do this weird guy that you want to do."
Exactly.
And because he amounts to nothing, and like they spend so much time on him, like he comes back multiple times in the movie, and then you've got a character like Tom Jones who actually ends up being kind of an important part of the movie, who's introduced in the last 30 minutes.
Yeah. Because I was watching the movie, I'm like, isn't Tom Jones in this movie? How come Tom Jones hasn't shown up yet?
Yeah. Although in my memory, and again, this is how quickly it seems to leave my mind, Tom Jones's music was what killed the aliens. Like, and I think maybe that would have been better than what
they showed up to kill him and then all of a sudden oh, done.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would have been funnier and incorporated him more into the movie rather than just being that random old lady's record.
Yeah. Well, it's the yodeling, right? It's the residence of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And even the old lady and the boy that works at the donut shop, like their story's kind of quite nice. He's a horrible family, and he's got one nice member of his family that he kind of relates to.
Yeah.
Like even that is nice, but none of it is developed in any way. Like none of it goes anywhere really. None of it.
Well, even like Natalie Portman's character, like she's the first daughter or whatever, and then you see her running, she gets left behind, and then you don't see her for a long time, and then it's the end of the movie and she's presenting an award, and you're like, she's
the president now.
But how is she the president? This is my question.
That's how it works. I guess everyone else got destroyed except for her. But
I still don't think that's how it works.
That's one thing. When this movie came out, I think that was like I had a real crush on Natalie Portman in this movie the first time that I saw it. So I think that was one thing that it had going for it. That to me as a kid, I think maybe part of my problem with it as a kid is I was around this time I was like into things like X-Files, and so things like this and Men in Black just didn't land for me. I feel like they weren't taking aliens seriously enough.
No, I think for me, I love the X-Files, and I think I've said this before, and I know I talk about Star Trek a lot, but X-Files is my favorite show. Like I'm gonna say it. Yeah. And so like I don't know, like anything supernatural or weird and stuff, as long as it wasn't making fun of something like the X-Files, I was still fine with. So like I love Men in Black. Like I love the first movie and the third movie. The second movie is garbage. But and also International.
I wanted a Men in Black movie and this movie probably wouldn't have been good, and I don't think anyone except me wanted it. But I wanted like a Men in Black movie that explored the real life phenomenon of the Men in Black and like that urban legend, and so when it was like a comedy kind of thing, it just didn't. And Independence Day, another one where just all to me it felt like they weren't taking that stuff seriously enough, and that was very much a product of being like a teen boy who probably took myself a bit too seriously. I was like hugely into paranormal stuff. It turned me off some of those movies. But that said, Mars Attacks, while it wasn't one of my favorites, I felt like it knew what it was. It wasn't in that middle ground. It was definitely a silly movie, and I liked that one a bit more, I think, than some of those ones around that time.
I mean, I think this one is more along the lines of like Plan 9 from Outer Space than Men in Black. Like they're not really trying to make fun of it, but they are feeding into this like paranoia that aliens are going to try to take over the world. Like that's just it.
I think what I like about it is the same things I like about Gremlins. Like you've got these really nice, cool creatures, and we get to see them in a range of environments doing fun and interesting things.
So it's not about the story. It's just like you like creatures and they're doing stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Gremlins, I think, has a decent story too, which is, I think, where this differs. But what I like about Mars Attacks, like I love you've got Martians in their undies hanging out in a spaceship. When they have to put their uniforms on, they're on a conveyor belt, and this thing just sticks their like uniforms on. Like I love all of that stuff. I love them blowing up doves. I love them doing weird things and kidnapping people and all of that sort of thing. I just didn't really care for much of the character stuff. On its own, I think it was okay. Like it wasn't badly done or anything like that. I just don't think it added very much to the movie.
But I think this movie does the same thing that a lot of like disaster or alien attack movie does. Like, so you set Independence Day, or if you're talking about like Deep Impact or something, where it picks a bunch of people and it's like, this is what's happening in the world before disaster happens, right? So it's always like there's always a politician of some sort, media of some sort, and a bunch of like random individuals around them that sort of connects to them somehow outside of just the thing happening.
They're a window into what's happening, right? Like they're from a range of point of views. This is what's happening. But I guess those people also then have some sort of effect on the story in the end. I feel like Independence Day, it's not one of my favorite movies, but like the characters that they choose a guy from the Air Force who then goes on to have some impact. They choose like the science guy that first discovers it, that goes on to have some impact going forward. Like the president, he actually is actively doing a bit more to progress the story. And I don't feel like anyone much progresses the story except for the donut kid.
Yeah, there's the donut kid. Well, and there's of course the president, like because he has to like meet the aliens and all that kind of stuff. Then you have.
But what was going to happen happens anyway.
That's true. What was going to happen?
All of the things that maybe this is a choice, and maybe it's a message about the nihilism and like there's just no point going up against these aliens. We're never going to win. But everything that every human character does, except for Donut Kid and his grandma, largely fails, and then the things that were going to happen anyway.
Anyways,
I guess that's where. So then I'm just like, well, what's the point of so many of these characters? Like, and especially like some of them are fun and some of them are interesting and some of them it's fun to watch die. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I just don't think that most of them contribute very much. They don't do much of the heavy lifting of the story of the movie.
Yeah, but I think that's why all of them die, though. I think, Tom Jones and his plane of 3 people, they live and come out in like a desert somewhere, fine. But we don't spend that much time with that ending. And then you got the
the president's daughter and the kid with his grandma, they get an award for saving the day. Who else? And the boxer guy and his wife. That's it. Compared to like the 845 other characters, all those guys die, and then you're left with like a tight 8.
True, and maybe part of it is that some of the deaths I think aren't interesting enough. Like we get what the general guy, who's not really a huge character, but he gets shrunk and then stepped on. Yeah. Like that to me is a far more interesting death. Or we get like Sarah Jessica Parker's character whose head gets taken off and put on a dog. Like that stuff is interesting, and like and even her stuff like with Pierce Brosnan I think is good, where they're the two heads and they're on the ship. Like that stuff's good because to me it feels like if it's not pushing the story forward, it's interesting. Whereas I feel like I don't even remember how the president died. Like I remember, like what?
He goes to shake the hand, and the hand comes off and crawls on his back and sticks to his body.
Oh, okay. Actually, that one is good. Okay, that to be fair, that one was good. But I feel like some of them, like Michael J. Fox, for example, like he's just killed kind of. Yeah. And it's
unceremoniously off screen. Yeah.
Like I feel if you're going to go that way, it should be really over the top and a bit more extreme, or a bit more silly, or a bit more like Final Destination type of stuff, where you've got where the deaths are really elaborate. Whereas I feel like some of them are just a bit underwhelming, and I think a lot of the human character stuff that maybe describes it well for me is just a bit underwhelming in comparison to the really crazy Martian stuff, which is really fun. And I really like that side of the movie.
Yeah, I guess too, a lot of these characters, maybe it has to do with the fact that they're all celebrities and people that you recognize. Yes. You don't expect them to die. But to me, you've met the characters, but you have no connection to the characters. So when they die, you're just like, oh, you're dead.
I think so. I think that's totally right. None of them, we don't get to know them well enough. Like if Byron had died, I think that would have actually been more impactful because he's one of the only characters whose backstory is in any way explored. Like, I mean, I missed some of it, obviously, with I thought his wife had got divorced and that. But even with him, like, he talks about he's trying to get things back on track. And he talks about, like, as much as I think the scene was kind of pointless, he talks about the fact that, like, he's not going to be a tough man for going and breaking people's knees and stuff for the guy that runs the casino. Like, he's this kind of moral man, and then at the end, he sacrifices himself to go and save these guys in a fist fight, which is like a really fun scene, like where he's boxing all of the Martians. Like again, like that was really fun, and that would have been a really awesome death. But then he didn't die,
which makes no sense because from what you see, he doesn't have the music playing, and he's on the ground. So how did he end up in Washington, D.C.? Like, how did he end up over there all of a sudden?
And it's just like he's one of the people that I think his death did feel a bit better, and then they bring him back, and so you lost that. Like almost it made his character a bit more boring as a result of him surviving to the end, and it made that story with his wife and stuff a bit more pointless as well because it was resolved. Whereas I feel like them. And maybe this is a bit too serious for this movie, but them having to move forward without their dad, who they'd lost, but who was also a hero in this battle against the Martians. Like, I think that would have been a bit more interesting and giving her a bit more to do as well. But because she was she's great, but she doesn't have anything to do in the movie. Like, she's just, and I think that's, and I want to like the movie because I like Mars Attacks and I like the idea of Mars Attacks, but I think maybe I don't like Mars Attacks that much. The movie.
I don't know. I think I definitely didn't get as much joy out of it as I have before, but there are definitely scenes in this movie that I still really enjoyed.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like there's, I know it's such a stupid scene, but you were mentioning the part where Sarah Jessica Parker on her head on the Chihuahua's body.
Yeah.
And she's talking to Pierce Brosnan's head that's just like hanging there. And they're flirting with each other. And the thing is, it's like they're talking whatever, but the Chihuahua body is emoting in dog language what her head is feeling. And for some reason,
I love that scene where she like the tail's going and the feet are going and you're like,
and it doesn't quite match 100% either. Like it's not quite fluid enough that it looks 100% good, but that actually adds to that the comedy scene. Of the No, I agree, and I think that's the thing. There are a lot of little vignettes that I enjoy within the movie, but I find it a hard watch as a movie. Like I'd almost rather just go and watch highlights of Mars Attacks on YouTube. Like I think I could get much joy from that.
Yeah, like I find it's the kind of movie. Like I think both of these movies are this where it's you're cleaning or you're cooking or you're working on a project or something, and it's on in the background. That's what it needs to be. Because if you pay too much attention to it, you're just like, what is going on?
I think that's a perfect description. I don't think I could describe it better. I can 100% see myself watching it while I'm writing or doing something like that.
Yes, yeah. Like, and I think that's the problem. I think for many years, if I've put Masters of the Universe on, it was, I got stuff to do. I need sounds. There you go. And then I turn around when Skeletor was like, whoa, you know, being all mean and stuff, and turn back around and be like, haha, and, you know, keep doing what I was doing. Or like when Mars Attacks come on, I was like, oh, I like this part. Turn around, watch it, turn back around, keep doing whatever I was doing. And that is more than enough.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, we didn't talk about this with Masters of the Universe. End credit scene as well. Like after the credits, where did you watch it?
Oh, where he comes back out and he starts laughing.
Yeah, pops back out and he's got like a smile on his face. I love that bit when I was a kid. I mustn't have seen it. I don't think, like, because we were watching this videotape. I feel like one day we just left the credits playing in the background and we discovered it. And from then on, you always had to watch Masters of the Universe till the end of the credits.
Gotta watch all of it, yeah. Like, it's not like now where you're used to be like, no, there has to be an end credit sequence. You got to check it out. Yeah. This is back in the day. Credits start, turn off. That was automatic. Like, that was just it.
If I see an action film now at the cinema, I'm Googling in the credits, is there an end credit scene before I leave? So,
I do it too. And it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is at all, whether it's Marvel or DC or just some random dude beating up some other dude. Gotta look it up just in case, because you don't want to miss any of it.
If it's Marvel, I'm staying regardless, because I know it. I just know it'll be there at this point. But any other movie, like Batman or whatever, at the end of it, just got to double check. No, I'm good. I can leave before the end of the credits.
I still can't believe people, like, credits start, they get up and walk out. I'm like, how do you not know this now? It's been like 12 years. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, it's especially all people that will watch the mid-credits scene. So they're kind of savvy, but then they leave before the end credits one. It's like, you know there's going to be another one, right? Like, are they living life having never, like, seen Thanos go and pick up a gauntlet, or having never seen Nick Fury come and meet Tony Stark? Like, do they not know that these things happened in the background?
The worst part is that on Netflix, how they do it is that they cut it so that it's like they're beside each other, so you don't have to sit through all of the credits to get like the end credit sequence. And when I found that out, I was just like, wait, what? This is crazy. You can't do this.
On Disney Plus, you can always pick like an episode of Ms. Marvel or something that will have an end credit scene, because it doesn't shrink after there's like the first credits and then there's the main credits. Yeah. And if it doesn't shrink after the first credits, there's going to be something hidden there.
Well, that's what I like with all of the Marvel TV shows. I scan the credits to see if I have to sit and wait for it or not. And then if I'm like scan, nothing, okay, turn off. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same.
I mean, I'm happy for all the creators. I'm good that you make us watch your names go by and stuff, but I've already spent 2.5 hours with you. I gotta go. I need to go. So,
there's a guy in one of the toy communities online that I'm a part of that worked on Thor Love and Thunder. Okay. And so I was like, cool, I'm gonna try to see his name. There's so many names, you can't even see them, even if you wanted to. So you may be watching the credit, but you can't absorb any of it, because there's like 4 billion names there.
Well, one thing me and my friends started doing during the credits was, so especially when you get to like the CGI people and all that kind of stuff, and like locations people and things, it's just little literal walls of names, right?
Yes, and that's what he was in.
And it was so frustrating. But the thing that we noticed is that some of them were alphabetical order by people's first names. Some of them are alphabetical order by people's last names. And I'm like, you guys need to pick one. This is not acceptable.
So they're not all the same within the same credits?
No.
Oh, that makes me want to vomit.
And then some of them were like, it's probably obvious that like, because so it's, you know, Marvel puts it out, but then you have like a VFX company who does this and a different company does this and blah, blah, blah. So they probably just sending them names and just dropping them in there however they did it, because even some of them weren't in any kind of order. I guess maybe they were like hierarchy order or something. But
you're probably right. Like they just copy and paste them from the email and straight into the credits.
They're like, look, this is what you sent me. This is what we put in. Get over it.
Yeah.
And we changed the font.
Because it's always really interesting because like every Marvel movie talks about like credits Screen Australia, even though very few of them are like filmed here or anything, because it's the same thing. Like some visual effects house here worked on them in some capacity.
Same thing with Canada. Yeah, Ontario Creates is on every single one of them because some VFX place in Toronto and in Vancouver worked on something. We're like,
Thor actually was filmed in Australia. It's like one of the only ones, but I guess. Mars Attacks, don't think that had an end credit scene though. I turned it off.
I did not check.
As soon as the credits started, I was like, okay, I've watched this twice in 4 months now, and
you're like, that's more than enough. I'm good. Yeah, I'm gonna go
and just immediately start forgetting this movie again. And, I had fun with it, and I watched it like in an hour and a half break while my son was having a nap, kind of thing. So it wasn't the ideal movie experience, and I'll acknowledge that too, because I think I was like watching it down the other end of the house, so I don't wake him up on the smaller TV. I didn't have popcorn. It wasn't like, which I think is what you kind of need for this movie, and maybe a few drinks. I think some of that, watching it with friends, I think all of those things would make that movie a better experience. Even it's perfect because you can chat over the boring bits and then just watch the fun bits. So I think it's, to me, it's not a terrible movie. It's a movie that I almost want to enjoy more than maybe I actually do enjoy it. It's almost the opposite of Master of the Universe, which I enjoy in spite of it. Mars Attacks I want to enjoy because I like the property and I like the idea of it and I like the premise of it and I like that they made this B movie but while also spending quite a bit of money on special effects and
like the director and the actors that are in there, you expect, you know, and like the production quality is really nice. I like the fact that they kept all of the color. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like in Masters of the Universe, I find they do this with like lots of like superheroes and comic book things and whatever. They drain all the colors out of everything because they're like everything has to be like black and sleek or gray and blah blah blah. But this, they're just like, no, we're keeping all them greens and purples and shiny things. We're putting even like the regular people and like, you know, like Glenn Close, she's the first lady and stuff, but everything she's wearing is like bright colors, like orange and blues and greens and all that kind of stuff. And they've just put everything is just so colorful. It's like very saturated looking.
Which is really, I think, quite a point of difference from a lot of Tim Burton's movies, which are visually interesting and do pop, but they're often blacks and whites and stripes and spots. And those kinds of things, whereas these are big primary colors, and there's nothing really black and white in this movie. Like everything is everything is colorful.
Yes, it really is. Yeah, I think the only other movie of his that I think is super colorful is Big Fish. I think that one's super colorful.
Yeah,
yes.
And actually, I'm just looking at some of the Mars Attacks stuff, but it's actually maybe not that true to the original. Because a lot of the colors of Mars Attacks, I'm just looking at the Mars Attacks stuff that I have here, is actually quite muted. Like
it is. Oh, they went the opposite actually.
Yeah, it's done in a more realistic kind of style, which I think works 100% better in the movie though, because I think if you went that realistic muted style in this, it would be something else. It would be a violent kind of R-rated, like it wouldn't. Yeah. The color and the goofiness is what sort of allows you to blow people up constantly, and not make a movie that's not made for anyone. Like
this is the kind of thing that I like. you think Ridley Scott would do if it was that dark of like colors and stuff. You're like, no, he's coming in. He's making a serious film about this alien invasion. People are gonna die. This is what's happening.
I think, like, my son has watched Ghostbusters. He's 2.5. He does like monsters and scary things. I'm not forcing these things on him. These are things that he's really wanting to watch, and I watch them with him to make sure he's safe. So I don't want it. Nobody calls child protection, but he's watched things like Ghostbusters. We watched some of Jurassic Park because he's into dinosaurs. Although some of that was a bit scary, so we don't watch a lot of those. Mars Attacks, despite the fact that it's probably one of the more violent movies that I've watched recently in terms of just like deaths and the amount of them, I wouldn't really have an issue if he saw this movie because it's all the way it's played. It doesn't feel real anyway. Like, I'm not intending to show it to him or anything, but if he was to come across this movie or he saw me watching it, I wouldn't be worried that he saw it outside of maybe the lady biting the thumb off. Like, everything else to me is so silly and over the top and like I say, colorful. It's not realistic, and I think that's a good choice for this movie. I think that was one of the choices that I really agree with in this movie.
So I'm going to be nitpicky about one thing that really frustrated me about this, right? Which was the scientist guy who's not Pierce Brosnan, the other dude who came up with like the translator machine or whatever.
He's from like a European country or something. He's got like an accent.
Something. Yeah. I wasn't paying that much attention to him. But because as soon as the translator came out, my question is, how did they come up with translations for? Because usually what happens is you hear a sample of a language, then you understand certain words. So like you figure out how to interpret certain words or tell a person like, this word means this thing. And like you tell it to each other. So then you can start extrapolating sounds, meaning certain sounds and stuff. And then you work out, translating the language together. That's usually how it works, right? Whereas this guy was like, aliens come, one message comes across this thing. You have no idea what he says. And they're like, oh, we have a translation machine. And I was like, what? I mean, I know Arrival hadn't come out yet and stuff, but come on.
Yeah. I actually don't think you're being that nitpicky with this. And I actually totally agree. I think the problem with it is there's a few things. So one, he clearly hasn't translated anything because the machine's doing the work, because he can adjust the machine and it changes the translations. So it's not like he definitely hasn't done what you've described, which is to like analyze their language. It seems to be a magic machine that just works. And I think that works in a B-movie type situation, maybe normally, but I don't think it works here because they actually play the world that these people live in pretty straight. Like, I can't think of any other examples from this movie where the world itself is fantastic or unbelievable. Only the Martians are fantastic and unbelievable. The humans are silly and over the top, but everything that they do are things that people could do. Like they fly planes, they use guns that exist. All the things that the humans do and try make sense and are realistic. And then you've got a guy with a magic translation machine. Yeah.
And maybe that's why I picked up on it like so readily, because I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't
so I think fit it's into the criticism. World. I think that's a pretty fair criticism because I don't like it doesn't fit the world that they built. It's maybe one of the only things that I can think of that really doesn't feel like it fits within that universe. And it just seems to be a means to an end. Like it's just like we need to translate them. Although they don't, because they never translate them properly anyway. And there's no reason that like they couldn't have done it another way. Like they couldn't have done it visually or
something. Yes. Well, and this is the problem, because even if the thing doesn't translate correctly, where is it getting whatever words is coming out of it from? Right. Because it's, like there's a whole joke later in the movie where the alien is like killing people and he's walking around with the translation machine. He's like, we come in peace, don't run. And you're just like, wait, how is it actually coming up with these words that it's saying in general?
It's like he built a machine that when birds sing, words come out of it, and those words actually are what the birds are trying to communicate. But there's no way to do that unless you like analyze birds for like years and years and try and actually think about like what they're communicating. And I think it really stands out. And it's just, it's a weird choice. And I feel like they could have done differently. Like they already are doing the signs with like the hand circles. Like they're already going in that other way, which I think is more interesting and actually more likely to kind of sell the idea that the dove was a miscommunication. Like if you don't have the translations, I think actually maybe it makes the story better in some ways, a bit more interesting. The only time that I think the translation machine makes itself worthwhile is when all of the aliens are like killing people and they're going, "We come in peace, we come in peace, we come in peace," and they're just like murdering people. I think that's the only time that the translation machine is reasonable. And maybe the Martians could have had a translation machine, and I think that would have been totally okay.
Yes.
I would have accepted that because everything else they do is fantastic anyway. Everything they have is fantastic. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter.
They could come up with whatever they wanted to. It does most ridiculous thing. We would have bought it. Yes.
And then you could still have the "we come in peace" joke. Like you could have still done all of the things that you did, but it would have made more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
I think it's a nit that was ready to be picked. I think
that was the one thing that I spent like so much time just thinking about. And then of course it came up to translations in like Star Trek and stuff, because the thing about like the Star Trek translation that always drives me crazy is that you'll have somebody saying like just a regular phrase, like you'll have like a Klingon something and you'll be like, "Get away from me, you stupid Patak." And you're like, Patak is a Klingon word. How come it didn't just translate, you piece of shit? Like, how come it didn't translate that part? Yeah. Or like, if I'm speaking English, if I say, I would like my pie a la mode, will it actually come out, "I would like my pie in the fashion"? Like, is it actually like switching it out from, like, how is it picking what to switch out and what not to switch out? Is always the thing that drove me nuts.
They translated everything except for swears. There was a lot of fracks and those kinds of things. And I mean, I guess that's it's a thing where you suspend the disbelief because you're like, they have swearing in a TV show that they probably otherwise wouldn't be allowed to have swearing in. Yeah. But I think there are a lot of problems with that idea of translations, especially when you don't have rules. Like you don't have specific rules. And I think that's like where something like Arrival was really interesting, is because like we actually saw what maybe this might, well, at least it felt like, I don't know how accurate some of those things are, but it felt like to me what that would really look like.
Yeah, like it's not an easy process to translate something completely new. Like most, what is it, the Tower of Babel or whatever is it's the thing that helped people translate things when they started, like culture started to meet each other. Was that what it was? Right?
I think so. I think so. I'm not 100% sure. The reason I think it's right is...
And the Rosetta Stone is the thing.
Is Babel fish or Babel, like the Tower of Babel or Babel fish is what they used to translate in Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Galaxy, yes.
So I think that's probably right.
Oh, was the Tower of Babel where all of the cultures got together and they used the Rosetta Stone because like the Rosetta Stone was like the key to the languages.
Like, I'm gonna assume that you're far more educated on this than me.
Now I got something else to look up.
Yes, you're 100% right. No, but I'm sure it must be related to language because we had the Babel fish in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which seems like that hasn't come from nowhere. And now I'm even, when I'm saying it, and not even sure that I'm pronouncing it right, but we use the term Babel to kind of explain language that we don't understand, like with kids. Like they're babbling. So I'm thinking that it's related to language.
It's related to language in some way. We're just going to go with it. Yes.
Yeah. If not, it's an easy mistake to make because there are so many connections.
Yes, but it's true. Like if you come to a language that you have absolutely no connection with, how do you translate it? And yes, and I think in Arrival, I think it's a painstaking
process to get there, yes. But also I think the end of Arrival, where it turns into time travel, spoiler alert, is stupid and it makes me angry. But anyways,
I saw it once the movie and I really enjoyed it, but I actually struggle to remember the ending. Like, that's not something that, and I think this is the thing with me for a lot of movies, is I watch movies and aspects of them really stand out to me and are really memorable, but I can often watch a movie that I've seen a lot of times and forget stuff really, really quickly. Like, I don't know if I only watch them fairly surface level, or maybe I just have a bad memory. I don't know. It's the same with books. Like, I could read a book and I could read the same book 6 months later and barely remember it. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't remember Arrival that well. I remember the language stuff that you were talking about quite well, and I don't remember the ending, because when you were talking about time travel, I was like, isn't that Interstellar? But that was just another movie that kind of did that. Another movie. Yeah. Which, a bit like Masters of the Universe, just ended with a time travel story.
For no reason. You're like, okay. A lot of problems. Yes. But isn't Interstellar more about traveling through a wormhole than time travel?
Yeah, no, Interstellar time travel and time, I think, is actually pretty key to that movie. It's not a thrown-in thing in the last 5 minutes.
Which is good. Good.
And I think even, like, there are certain ones that do it where it's like more like an implant that you get, and it's like there's a library of languages that are included in that implant, because it's like Guardians of the Galaxy. So, like, they can understand each other, but they can't understand Groot. Like, only people that speak Groot's language can understand Groot, because his language isn't in that kind of database of languages that they have. So I like that as an idea, so that there are, like, common languages could be in some sort of computer. And so we could use that, like, if we say on Earth, maybe a similar kind of thing, like maybe we've got Mandarin and we've got English and we've got Italian, and we know those languages really well, and someone's like put all of those into some sort of computer, and it's tiny, and we can have that in our brain, and it does the translations for us, because that's not so different to like what our phones can already do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. And then there are some like lesser known languages, like, so maybe there's, I don't know, some indigenous dialects and things like that, which are maybe more relative to like a Groot's language, that aren't well known, and they aren't included in that kind of database of languages. And so I think if you do something like that, like, I think that one kind of works. It has its own sort of rules that work and kind of make sense within the universe. But yeah, translation's a tricky thing to do well.
Yes, it is. Especially when it's being represented in a way where you see the character speaking your language, like they're speaking English, where you know they're not actually speaking English. And then at a certain point it breaks down and you're like, wait, so what does another person hear actually? It's not their voice, it's the computer voice. How are they hearing this voice? Because like, again, I'm gonna bring back to Star Trek again. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But there was an episode of Discovery, which, don't watch Discovery, it's fine. But the first season had some interesting things in it, and there's a scene where, was it first season or second season? But the Universal Translator shut down on their bridge. Like, it shut down. And then everybody started talking, and like one person was speaking French and one person was speaking some alien language, another person was speaking some alien language, and Japanese and French and whatever. Everybody's speaking something different, and they couldn't understand each other. And the only person who had ever studied languages, because he came from a place where you didn't have a universal translator, was Saru. And then he just started speaking in different languages to people so they can figure things out, but nobody could understand each other. But then I was thinking to myself, so if the universal translator breaks down, I always thought it was something like a comm badge or whatever, but apparently it's not. But like, what are the people actually hearing when somebody's talking to them?
Yeah.
Right. So are they hearing like a computer voice? Is the computer modulating my voice into the different language? Like, that's how is that working exactly? Like I thought it was
like explained it in a really good way with having it break down that they all talk different languages, and I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And then you start talking about the next bit, you're like, and I'm like, oh no, there is more to it than that.
Yeah. So, and also, like, where is the sound coming from? Like, you know, like there's definitely scenes where two people are in one corner talking and two people are in another corner talking.
Yeah.
Somebody's yelling at like, but who is like, where is the sound each person is hearing coming from?
Is
like
it telepathic almost? Is
yeah.
it like, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like questions as to how that actually works.
You've ruined anything that translates for me probably going forward. I feel like I'm not going to be able to, no, it's cool though, but it's really interesting. It's something in some cases I sort of had some of these thoughts, but I certainly hadn't thought about like, is it my voice? Like, or is everyone hearing like the same voice, like for everyone? Or is it like, how does it decide what voice to use? Because all of a sudden, like, if you're thinking, like, I would say Guardians of the Galaxy, because it's one that I'm kind of a bit more familiar with. You've got like Peter Quill and you've got Gamora, and they're falling in love. But there's this whole aspect of us that is our voice and is our words and the way we say things and those like little tics that we have and those kinds of things that they're missing out on. Like they're missing out on this whole aspect of another person if it is a computer just kind of approximating.
Yeah. Is it like calling like a company and you're hearing like the automated thing, you know, please say yes if you'd like to talk to an operator. Like if that's what you're hearing all the time,
is it my Samsung phone that's just kind of, I point it at the thing and it just kind of blurrily changes it into words. Like is that kind of what's happening? Yeah, that's cool and even a little bit sad. Like when you start thinking about that, because it would be like if you only had a relationship with someone on Google Translate. Mm-hmm. Like you'd miss so much nuance about that other person, and you'd miss so much. Like
because I think like your voice is a part of who you are, right? And if someone can't hear you, not necessarily hear you, but even like people who do sign language and stuff, they have an intonation of like how they move their hands and how they put things across. So like it's their voice, it's the same thing.
They've still got a personality.
Yeah, like, and if you're not hearing that, like what is it? Or even something else as simple as like, if I'm talking, does the translator say have a lady voice? And if you're talking, does the translator have a man voice?
Yes.
You know, or is it like still generic voice for everybody? Like what are these things?
I was actually editing, this is a really interesting point because it's something I was thinking of really recently. I was editing so actually me and my friend, I've enjoyed being on your podcast so much that we're actually in the process of putting something together. Still very early days on it, and but one of the things I was doing was editing the podcast, right? And there are certain things that I've noticed from both of us that we repeat a lot, certain words that we repeat a lot. And I'm like, do I remove those, or does that take too much of our character? Like, does that take too much personality away from us? And it got to the point that I went through, because the software I'm using, I can actually find all of the times, for example, that Nick, who I'm doing the podcast with, he will say, you know, quite a lot. And I can actually go through and just search for all the times he said, you know, in the podcast, and I can delete them. Like I can do that. And there are a lot of them. But then I'm like, am I taking away too much of his personality if I do that? And I'm not sure I'm 100% even happy with where I've landed on it as a rule of thumb at the moment, but I'm taking it on a case-by-case basis where if there's a whole area where there's a lot of them, I might cut them down a little bit because I think that can be distracting to what we're actually saying. But there are other times where I'm like leaving them because I feel like, no, that's actually a part of the way that we're emoting. Similarly for me, I'll regularly repeat words, and I didn't realize that I did this until I started editing the thing, that I repeat words quite a bit. And then I'm like, well, I can delete all the repeated words. But there are some times when I'm repeating words to actually give a bit more. It's me repeating words is showing that I'm thinking about what I'm saying. And so when I remove them, yes, maybe it makes the dialogue pacier, but also maybe doesn't look like I'm not putting as much thought into the things that I say. And it's very interesting. And I think with the idea of translating people automatically, you are going to lose all of that stuff. You are going to lose because it's going to be editing us on the fly, whether it means to or not, to make us the most understandable that we could be. That's quite sad.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because that is something I have to do on a very regular basis. Because for some reason I say, to be honest, on a very often. I am not 100% sure why, but very regularly I say, to be honest, blah 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 blah, and I have to cut them. I just say it too often, and I cut them out on a case by case basis. Like as I'm listening and going through, this one's not necessary. This one's out. This I can pull. No, this one should stay in, because it's very necessary for me to be like, this is my opinion. Not just like a general thing and blah blah blah. Yeah.
Because sometimes you're just talking about something, and that's just and I hadn't realized it. And I've edited film before, but I feel like film is more deliberate than a podcast is.
It's scripted. Do you mean scripted?
Yeah, but not even scripted. So we had a YouTube show that we were doing, did lots of improvisation, but it was very focused on getting to a place. Whereas I feel like at least with the podcast, like your podcast, with what we're doing, that we've kind of got a couple of different things going on. We actually do have a little bit of scripted stuff in our podcast, but it is a bit more it's more of like a real conversation that you're capturing, I think. And when you're capturing a real conversation, we have these things that I think make us feel a bit more comfortable as speakers, and that we do to fill space, and that we don't tend to do as much on film, I don't think, because we're not actually capturing a conversation very often on film, unless it's an interview. It just feels like, it's something that I found quite, because I've even edited interviews on for people's films and stuff, and never really come across it. But in podcast format, it was like the first thing that I noticed I was editing.
But also, the thing is, when you have something visual, there's another one. The thing is, it's one I say all the time. When you have something visual to go along with what you're saying, you focus less on just the words, so you understand. Because like I will remember a conversation going smoothly, everything's good, talking the whole time, and then I go listen to just the audio to edit, and there's big gaps in it. But it's usually because you're sitting back thinking about something, and then you come back and say something, and visually you're just like, no, I can see what you're doing. I can see you're thinking about something, and you're going to come back. But when it's just dead air, you're just like, what is this okay? Like, what is,
I'm going to snip that out.
Yeah. So you snip it and you cut it out. So it sounds more even, like sounds more continuous. So the pacing is better, because I have to do that all the time. Because I mean, I think I've mentioned this before. I do a lot of Googling usually on this thing. And so I'm here going like, what's this thing? Reading something, whatever. There's like dead air. But to me, it's part of the conversation doing all of that. And then when you see the video, it makes sense. But when it's just like dead air and tippa-tappa, you're just like, that's got to come out. Like, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah. It's something I've learned so much about being on the other side of podcasts, because I've only ever been, like, I've been on your podcast. I've done some pre-recorded stuff for another podcast. Like I've done little bits and pieces for things, but I've never, I was quite green and quite naive about, I guess, the creation of podcasts. Like even little things like not knowing about hosting and all of these things that are part of podcasts that I'm.
It was a huge process when I started doing it. Yeah.
And I thought that like editing, like I thought I'd have a pretty good grasp on it because I've edited film. I've edited sound for film. I've done a little bit of soundscapey type stuff, but it's very different to what I'm finding with the podcast side of things. And so I'm finding it very, very interesting. But I think I was a little bit naive. Like, I think I had this idea that you had to do a lot less editing of a podcast. And this isn't to, like, I don't want to put down people that make podcasts. Like, I'm not saying people don't do the work. But in my mind, I was thinking it was going to be easier than, like, putting together, like, a film or a YouTube video. And it isn't. It's just different. Like, it's a lot of editing that goes into it. Like, in some ways, and I think maybe over time I'm going to get a bit more proficient in it as well, and knowing what I want to delete and what I don't want to delete. I'm not going to spend as much time like sweating on those decisions, but at the moment, like it's just taken me a lot more time to edit.
I mean, I
thought it would take.
But yeah, I mean, like this all kind of goes in with all of this language, stuff, and which is sort of a deep subject to get into when talking about a movie like Mars Attacks, where you're just like, really, it's not a deep movie or anything. It just has this like one concept that is, if you actually take a minute to think about it, is just so much bigger and so much deeper than you expect it to be.
Definitely. And I think it's one of those things where like you've got a podcast where you talk about movies and you want to have an interesting point of view, and Mars Attacks doesn't give you maybe that many things to talk about that are like, it's because it deliberately doesn't have a lot of deep themes. It deliberately doesn't have like a lot of that stuff, but there's stuff there. Like there is interesting things in it to talk about.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, like an interesting thing was the Americanization of like military things and like this obsession with like guns and stuff. Like so we were talking before about the what's his character's name? Jack Black's character's name or whatever. We meet them, they're in the trailer park, he's putting each other gun, and the family's all excited about him going to the military and protecting the family and blah 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 blah. And you're just like there is something to be said about wanting to save your way of life. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is something about the obsession with guns and wanting to kill things. There is a problem with that obsession. And
you've actually, and maybe this, it felt like we were winding up on Buzz Next Talk, but I think maybe you've talked about something that really blown something over for me that I hadn't really thought about. It is very much America's response to one of these kinds of things. And as two people that don't live in America, you live a little closer to America than I do, but I still feel like Canada very much has its own identity apart from America and personalities, and the people of Canada, like the culture is different, right? Like the culture is quite different between Canada and America. And again, culture is quite different between Australia and America. To me, it feels very much like, and it's satire, like it's not realistically looking at America, but it's very much an American point of view on what would happen in an invasion. We never see someone from another country really in this movie, except for maybe the translated guy. I think maybe he is from another country.
Well, they do that one thing where the president of France calls and says, "Oh, we've made a deal," and then they get blown up.
Right.
But that's the only. Yeah.
Like it's an American's point of view of France. Like we didn't see them attacking Paris. We don't see them. Because a lot of invasion movies, like if aliens invade Australia, they're probably going to destroy the Sydney Opera House. Like that's what we've learned as Australians. And if aliens attack Canada, they're probably destroying CN Tower. Like there are certain things that you regularly see, like in these things, and maybe it was part of that cutting back on having too many characters and some of those things. We never see. And which is weird for an invasion movie, we never see how it impacts the rest of the world. We
don't. Not at the end, no.
Which is interesting and is, I'm guessing, a choice. Like at some point they made decision.
It's an American, alien invasion movie. It's going to be America-centric. Like it happens look at Independence Day. Like why is it centered around the American government? Like they show shots of the alien ships all over the world.
Yes.
But we focus on the American government and you have to give an Independence Day speech, and it's Independence Day. Yes. Remember that, because the America, it's.
I think that's the key thing, though. We don't even get that. Like, we don't even get the UFOs flying over England or anything in Mars Attacks. I don't think. Do we? Like,
no, we only get that one scene in France. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like. Yeah, I think that's just interesting. Like, I think that was something I hadn't really noticed until you were talking about the American aspect of it, and it's the obsession with guns and some of that. Just the fact that military responses, like even when they're like, we're going to have a peaceful meeting with these guys, there are tanks there. Like it isn't like they're still setting a show of force even if they're going to try and be peaceful.
Yeah, but that goes back a long way. I mean, like you have like Close Encounters of the Third Kind is the same way. It's all American centric.
Yes.
You have like we mentioned Independence Day already, War of the Worlds, which goes even further back, America centric as well. Like, I mean, they have things where like on the radio somebody talks about something happening somewhere else, but that's about it. But everything is America centric, and that's because the movie's made in America and you want America to be cool. I don't know, but you know,
I feel like maybe, I don't know, I just feel like in this one maybe he has made, and I don't know necessarily the reasons for it. It does feel like they are satirizing America to an extent, and that culture, and so they've deliberately seemed to have made the choice not to show the rest of the world, like, because to me that's just part of an invasion movie that you show, even if it's not important to the story, you show the scale of the invasion by showing some of those other places, and they haven't done that, which I think is really interesting. Like, it reminds me of, to get totally off topic, a movie that I really like, Signs, and Signs
which was ruined in the last 5 minutes of that movie, ruined the rest of it.
That's a bigger conversation. I really like Signs, and I won't have anyone talk badly about it. It's like, I think there are real criticisms of Signs, but I love Signs. But mainly what I think is works so well about that movie is it is that American point of view, but it's actually that family's point of view. And so you never see anything. It's exactly like you say. We hear radio stuff about other countries, but we only ever see what those people see. And I think that really narrow version of an invasion movie is really interesting, and it feels really real and a bit scarier, because it's like that could be any one of us, and it's that real grassroots version of an invasion movie.
It's because it's like, from the point of view of like the regular person who has no control, right?
Yeah.
So it does feel scary because it does feel like, what if this happens to me?
And we don't know everything. Like, we don't see the point of view of the aliens. We don't see what the president's thinking of. So in that movie, so much of it is unknown. So much of it is happening. We can't control it. Like, we're totally out of control of it, like you said. And Mars Attacks is the opposite of that. Like, we see every aspect of the invasion. Like, we see it from the aliens' point of view. Like, even Independence Day, we don't see a lot of stuff of the aliens in their ships. We see like a little bit, but we don't see very much. So it's weird to me. It's a weird choice, I guess, that we see so much of that, but we don't see any aspect of the rest of the world, apart from that one very short moment in France to say, yes, there are Martians in other parts of the world, but we don't see. And I think, I don't know, maybe I think that does just, maybe the scale of it feels a bit smaller as a result. I
think it's directly from Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's the same thing, except minus the vampire and zombie for some reason. But it's the same thing. Like, it's aliens, they come to the US, and it's US people doing US things in that. And I think, you know, if you want to play homage to a director that you think it's not that he thinks he's underrated, he just like loves what he did, you know, in some way. Just, there's nothing wrong with liking bad movies, but sometimes it's more about the inspiration of the person.
I think we both probably like a lot of bad movies.
Oh yes. So I think he was just bringing a new version of Plan 9 to life, essentially.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really fair look at it. And it's not even really a criticism. It's just something that I hadn't noticed, I guess, until we were talking about it. And it just, to me, feels quite weird in an invasion movie not to have some of those, like them crashing into the Eiffel Tower, them, like, because they have the Washington Monument. Is that what it's called? The big pointy white thing. They have that, like, and that they do a really cool thing with that, and that's like a really iconic place, and they just kind of, I like that. And maybe it's a smart choice not to include some of those things we've seen 1,000 times of aliens flying past the Eiffel Tower. If we're not going to spend any time there,
or like past a pyramid or something, you know.
Yes, like maybe maybe that's a fair choice. I just feel like maybe it misses out on some of the opportunities to have some fun Martian stuff at some of those other iconic places. And maybe that's just because so much of what I like in this movie is the Martians and the things that they do. It's about, like, if I was going to make a Mars Attacks movie, I wouldn't worry too much about the story. I'd worry about, like, what's the best way to put these guys in as many interesting environments and locations as possible that we can explore. I think that,
like, how are they going to interact and interpret these spaces, right?
Yeah. Let's see Martians in the Amazon. Let's see Martians like all of that stuff could be really fun. Let's, like, what happens when the UFO crashes into the Great Wall of China, and, like, all of these kind of, I feel like that's what Mars Attacks could be. And maybe that's not what he, like you say, I don't think that's necessarily what he wanted it to be, but I think maybe that's, if there was to be a future Mars Attacks, maybe that's something that I would like to see a bit more of, like that greater impact on the world.
Yeah. No, I could see that. Yeah. I think that would make it more interesting. Like, I think we've already said this, is that you just need less characters and just something more for the aliens to do or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Movie, again, I think it's got its problems. It's a movie I enjoyed, but it's maybe not the best movie, Pacific Rim. But we see them in, like, all these different locations. And even though some of those locations are only, like, they're almost cameos, it's cool to see, like, worldwide what kind of happened with these robots and the invasion, and that we have a international group working together. It's like that America's decided that they're going to meet with the Martians first, and nobody cares. Like no one else from another country has said, well, actually, we'd like to be involved in that too.
Like, can we come over? Is this fine? Yeah.
Yeah.
But before we get off Pacific Rim, I think Pacific Rim is the robots fighting monster movie that John Wick is. Okay. It just straight line. We got, for some reason, they're coming out of the ocean, but we got monsters, and we built a bunch of robots to fight the monsters. Go. That's all that happened. That's all we need.
It's quite enjoyable. Yes. I mean, maybe I even enjoy these. Some very bad Australian accents aside, it's a very enjoyable movie. But they're fun. I like a bad Australian accent as much as the next person.
As a person who comes from a country where nobody can fake the accent, I know how you're feeling about it. It's fine.
Yes, it's like Australian actors exist.
They got in a bunch of British people and Americans. So all right.
Like half the MCU and superhero, like the superhero movies are Australian actors, like, doing other accents. Why not cast them as Australian every once in a while?
They might be able to do it. You know.
But I quite enjoy those accents, and everything in that movie is so exaggerated that they do really work. Like,
they do.
In that universe, they work. And certainly, like, I don't know if you've ever watched anime with, like, big robots and stuff. There are regularly those Australian pilots or, like, Russian pilots or whatever that they don't sound like they're from the countries that they're meant to be from, because they're the same 5 or 6 voice actors that dub everything doing them. But the other thing I've noticed, and in a lot of movies, and maybe get off topic, is the guys with the really strong Australian accents often are bad guys. They often just seem to be bad guys. They're often, like, starting fights. Like, if you ever see any kind of, especially a lot of the Asian, like, martial arts movies, things like Ong Bak, Ip Man, all of those kinds of things, there's always an Australian guy that comes in and starts the fight. So I don't know what that says about us as or the way we're perceived as a culture, or maybe there are just a lot of Australian stuntmen in those movies.
Maybe they're just like, come on over, just come do it. You're close.
Yeah. You can use your real accent for this one.
They're like, finally, just beat up this guy, sound Australian. Like, okay, done. I mean, I don't hate this movie. I know we've bashed on it a bit, but I don't hate it. I don't.
I think I dislike this one more than you. I think I like Masters of the Universe more than you did, and I think I dislike this one more than you did. But I think we both like aspects of both, right? Like there are parts of them that we enjoy. Just maybe as overall movies, they're not. They've got problems. They're flawed movies.
Yeah, I think the problem with Mars Attacks as well is that you have to get that it is an homage to a certain type of movie to get the movie. Because if you put somebody in front of this who has never seen a B movie or doesn't know about those like cheesy alien and monster movies from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they'll look at this and be like, what is this nonsense? Like, this is just, they're like, it's not even like good campy, like it's bad campy. You're like, but it's supposed to be bad campy. Like, that's the whole point. Like, so you have to have like a history to understand Mars Attacks.
And that hard. It's hard to kind of recognize it because I think of some of the other B movie kind of parodies and things that I've seen. They're often made with the budget of those, or even a lesser budget than those originals. Whereas this has a huge budget, and clearly does, and they clearly make them look a little bit janky on purpose. Like they clearly want the Martians to be reminiscent of those older aliens. Like they don't make them look hyper real or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But the effects are still really good. And I think that kind of is a weird juxtaposition as well, because you've got that B movie ideas versus big budget aesthetics a little bit. And maybe, I don't know if that's 100% successful, at least for me, I think.
Well, according to these box office stats, it was not successful.
Oh, really? I actually didn't know. Yeah, I thought it was fairly big. Yeah.
No, it had a $70 million budget. In Canada and the US, it only made $37 million. And worldwide, it made $101 million. So it just profited. But that's low for that kind of movie.
There was a lot of, and I think maybe why I think of it as being a bigger movie than probably it was, is all the merchandise and all of the promotion around it was pretty big. Like I feel like, well, there was like a toy line that came out with it, which was very reminiscent of. Did Independence Day or Mars Attacks come out first? Independence Day came out first, right?
I'm pretty sure it was Independence Day.
Yeah, because, and I'm guessing the toys were the same, but the Independence Day toys I remember thinking were amazing, like when they came out. And one of the cool things with the Independence Day toys is they came with like a floppy disk with like video game type stuff on it. Mm-hmm. And at the time, that obviously very dated now to come with a floppy disk, but at the time was like pretty impressive. And Mars Attacks also came with floppy disks, I'm pretty sure. It also came with...
They came out in the same year.
Okay. Yeah.
So Independence Day 96 July. No, it came out Independence Day weekend. It was July 3rd.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Let's see what it grossed. Opening weekend, it made $50 million. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Mars Attacks was Christmas. Why would you put this out on Christmas? I guess you don't want to put this out.
You don't want to have the same time as Independence Day.
No, definitely not. No.
And I don't know whether it helps it or hurts it that they came out so close together. Because there's part of me that's like, you get two big invasion movies, but they're so different. And Mars Attacks could almost be like the parody version of Independence Day in some ways. Like
this came out like a week later. I would have watched both of them.
Yeah, but maybe it coming out 6 months later as a movie actually is a positive for Mars Attacks. Obviously, it wasn't a positive for its box office, but a positive in terms of how that movie reads, as it's almost like a reaction to Independence Day. Yeah. Like it's taken that more serious tone. Not that movie was real serious, but that kind of more adult version, and then applying this kind of funny, silly kind of aesthetic to it. That's really interesting.
So, I love that we're calling Independence Day like the serious movie.
Yeah, of these two movies. I think so. But that's really interesting because obviously the toy lines there must have come out really close together.
Yeah, as well.
And I remember that the floppy disks being a big part of the selling point of them, that they came with. I don't know if they were video games or they were like that kind of like AR stuff that we get a lot of these days.
That's true. Yeah.
Like online. It was like the early sort of viral marketing type stuff where you kind of can find out, like when Jurassic Park comes out, and you can go on the website and you can find out more about the companies, like you'll find out more about Biosin or whatever. I think that there may have been video games on the discs as well, but I think maybe that's more what it was. It was like this kind of world building
kind
stuff,
of thing, yeah,
which I thought was pretty cool. I don't think I had any of the Mars Attacks toys though. We had some of the Independence Day ones, which were, like I say, really cool. When they came out, I thought were really cool. I think I had the toys maybe before I saw the movie, and then I was like, it's not as cool as the toys were.
No, I don't have anything from either of these properties. But this was just around the time I started getting like properly nerdy, like comic books and collecting things. So I wasn't there yet. Yet.
There are some cool Mars Attacks comics. I haven't read many of them. I read one which I thought was pretty cool because it's about a guy that goes to see his dad at like an old age home. And I think basically he's going to tell his dad that he's not going to see him anymore because his dad's like a real asshole to him and really hard. He's basically like the parents are on the Donut Kid in the movie. And the Mars Attacks invasion happens while he's visiting his dad. And so they end up going on like a road trip across America together, but they hate each other to like try and survive the invasion. It's quite cool. I thought it was fun. And there were a whole bunch of crossovers. I'm just trying to think what they were. Like I feel like there was like Mars Attacks versus Popeye, maybe. And maybe I'm making that up. Because it was a period where there were a lot of weird crossovers. And because I remember there was like the DC Looney Tunes crossovers and things like that, but I feel like Mars Attacks maybe it was like Planet of the Apes or something as well. It might have crossed over.
Well, there's Mars Attacks and Red Sonja.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's a Judge Dredd one.
There's a Judge Dredd one.
Yeah.
There's there seems to be a 50-foot woman.
Okay.
There's a He-Man.
Oh wow, I didn't know about that one.
What is this one? It says just Mars Attacks 1, but the cover looks like He-Man.
I think maybe that was a series where I think maybe if someone like IDW or someone had it at the time. And so each issue...
Dynamite.
It was Dynamite, yeah. So, but each issue was like teaming up with a different property. So maybe Popeye might have been one of the issues of that. So like...
Actually, sorry, I looked it up. It says it's John Carter from Mars.
Oh, okay, that was probably the sci-fi one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but he's got like the cross thing on his chest and he's wearing Speedos. It looks like He-Man.
Yeah. Like I say, I think there was a couple where they crossed over with they potentially crossed over with a whole bunch of things. I may be confusing two different storylines too, because IDW did a thing called Invasion, where and then a second one later with it called Infestation, where it was kind of a crossover, but the properties never crossed over. But they basically had the same villain across all of the books that they were writing at the time. So there was like Ghostbusters and there was G.I. Joe and Star Trek. They never actually crossed over with each other, but they all had the same villain. And I thought that there was something similar with Mars Attacks to that, but I might be mixing two things up.
I don't know. I'm literally just looking at covers right now.
Yeah.
So trying to figure it out. I'm like, I don't know. There's just something called like the complete collection, and then there's occupation, and there's classics, and then there's Mars Attacks Red Sonja, Mars Attacks Judge Dredd, and then there's numbers on them. So I don't know who's in those ones.
So there was certainly some weird crossovers anyway. Judge Dredd is a natural.
There's the Car Butt Boys. I don't know what that means.
I'm not too sure either. I feel like Mars Attacks has had a little bit of a renaissance, though. There seems to be a little bit more Mars Attacks merchandise out in the world. Like I had that action figure that I showed you earlier, and there was a series of them. The trading card book. There was a miniatures game, I think, based on Mars Attacks. So
well, I think a lot of companies are like with film and TV, it's all about nostalgia, and they're finding like, cult places, like cult classics and stuff. They're putting out like limited runs and stuff just to make a little bit of money on the things, right?
Exactly. And these Mars Attacks figures, the ones that I have, it's not like when the movie came out, these aren't figures for kids. Like you're paying a decent amount of money to get them, and they're very much aimed at those collectors, and they're I guess there's a big enough audience that likes Mars Attacks that they can make them, but they're still pretty niche. I think like they're probably only making, I don't know, 1,000 of these things and sending them to the world.
Well, even with the Master of the Universe ones, like there's some company doing like detailed figurines and stuff, and each one is like, you know, a couple $100 for it.
Oh, Mondo, like, I think they're probably the Mondo figures. Yeah. Yeah. And that seems to be, I guess, we're at that point, right, where we're the right age that we have enough money to buy a $200 Masters of the Universe figure if we really want to do it. But that there's also enough of us that would do that.
Would do it. Yeah. and that is both the great thing and the sad thing about it.
Yes. I just bought a $200 Wolverine figure the other day, so I can't comment on that at all.
I don't even know what's the most expensive figurine I have is. It's probably around $200. I wouldn't be surprised.
When I got into action figure photography, I got into higher end action figures because it just allows you to do more with the photo. Like there's more articulation, higher quality. When you get that close to them, they look better. And yeah, I fell down a rabbit hole from buying more expensive things. Not that I go crazy with it. Obviously, we have to live and do all of those kinds of things. Yeah. Wolverine was bought on Afterpay, but I'm paying it off in installments. But yeah, there's definitely that high end market for this stuff now, and Mars Attacks is in there. Like there are, I mean, I don't know how much those figures would go for in the US, but to get them here, you're looking at least $35 to $50 to get these Mars Attacks figures, which are a couple of inches tall, and they're basic. Like they're not anything special. They look nice, but they're pretty basic figures. So there's a market for this stuff, and there are people getting them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people, so I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Anyways, any last thoughts on these two movies? I know we've had some very deep discussions about both of them.
I think that they're both, to me, I think they were a good pairing in a way, because there was obviously like a decade or so apart, but they're both doing a similar thing where they're adapting an existing property but maybe also aiming it at a slightly different audience. Like I don't think that Mars Attacks was necessarily aimed at people that collected the trading cards.
No.
That Masters of the Universe is necessarily aimed at people that were watching the cartoon and collecting the toys. It's probably aimed at an older audience. So it's just sort of interesting to see two decades apart how they kind of adapted maybe in some ways similar properties.
Well, you brought that up, and my thing about Masters of the Universe is that the toys was one of the most successful toy lines like ever.
Yes.
Besides Barbie and Star Wars, those are the only other two, and their popularity spans like 6 years.
Yes.
So my question is like, why would you make this like the movie for an adult audience? Why wouldn't you make it for the people who your toys are aimed at, which are little kids? And I'm not saying that you have to make like a ridiculously childish movie, but why wouldn't you make something aimed more at a lower demographic than you were? Like it just, because like when the toys came out in 1982 and was aimed at 5-year-olds. Right. Yeah. So by the time
10-year-olds.
Like why wouldn't you aim the movie at 10-year-olds or even 15-year-olds? Like this movie is clearly aimed at something a little bit older than that.
Yeah.
It just seems weird.
It is weird. And I mean, kids still obviously were watching it, but it is a weird choice because I don't know what the thought process behind doing that is, especially there for that particular property to do that. Because I think if you like a comparable thing would be like Ninja Turtles, where that first movie is a bit more mature, but that is clearly based more on the comics, which was another avenue. like a mature Masters of the Universe movie makes sense maybe today, but it, like say, it didn't make sense in 1987.
No, it just doesn't. It just doesn't. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's my last thought on it. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it goes back to what we said all the way at the beginning of recording this, where when you're a kid, you think something lasts way longer than it did. And then I was reading about it and I was like, oh no, He-Man was only around for like 5 years. What? Yeah. What? This was half my childhood. Apparently it wasn't. Like
yeah. Well, it spanned, from my point of view, both my uncle and my childhoods. And my uncle, that sounds weird. My uncle's not that much older than me. He's probably more like an older brother. Like he was in high school when I was in primary school. Like we're not hugely different, but he was like the very beginnings of Masters of the Universe. And I feel like I was at the end because I had a lot of those figures that I know now are the later ones and maybe a bit rarer. And even had some of the figures from the relaunch of Masters of the Universe, the space one. Yeah. Which actually the space Masters of the Universe does kind of probably would have maybe fit more into with this movie with the blaster, like that aesthetic might have worked better here. But yeah, it is interesting how short a period of time it actually was, because for me, it feels like it always existed when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's the same thing with me and like She-Ra and like Transformers and stuff. Like, I mean, I remember when we did the episode on like Batman the Animated Series, and I was like, no, this was on for like 15 years. It was like 3 seasons. You're like, what? Yes. This is crazy. Like, it's just.
And I think there were a lot more repeating of things and stuff back in those days than there is now. Obviously, we can get whatever we want, whenever we want now. So we crave new content more. We have more choices, but. Certainly, the same for me, and I think Ninja Turtles had a lot of seasons of the show. But when I go back, what I recognize is actually I think I only watched the first 2 seasons of that cartoon. I haven't seen any of the stuff from later on in Ninja Turtles, because I was just looking at some of it recently with some of the newer action figures that were coming out based on the cartoon, and like so many of the characters I don't recognize. And I feel like I watched Ninja Turtles all the time. As a kid, like I feel like I watched all of it, but maybe I only watched a couple of seasons of it. Like maybe I was actually only into Ninja Turtles heavily for 2 or 3 years, and then it went on after that, and I just wasn't aware of it.
I will. No, I remember a bit of the cartoon, and I know I used to watch it after school all the time. And there are definitely like certain episodes that are in my brain. Or like the small things, like, you know, in the cartoon, Splinter was a man that turned into a rat, whereas in the movie, he was a rat that turned into like a bigger dude, whatever, like taught kung fu and whatever. Like things like that I remember. But I don't like I have never revisited the original Ninja Turtles cartoon, which I think is a shame. I probably should. But
the first few episodes are quite good, and then I don't know that after that it holds up that well. But but especially because we've got some really good Ninja Turtles cartoons and stuff later on, I think they're probably a lot better. But I watched it. I was heavily into it as a kid. I mentioned I didn't have electricity. We actually did have a generator, so we could do certain things in our shed. Yeah. Later on, in the shed, we had a TV, but we could only watch TV for as long as we had like electricity for the generator. So we basically were allowed 1 episode of something each, and my episode every day was Ninja Turtles. So that was what I chose to watch. So I was watching that show, but really I think I was only heavily into it. I'm realizing now as an adult who's got back into it heavily that I was probably only into it as a kid for a couple of years. And then moved on to other, like we all did, moved on to other things that were important to us after that. And I guess it just shows how important those childhood memories are to us, even as we grow up, that we remember them so vividly, and that they do seem to span such a long period of time, and that I can remember all of the movies that I watched then vividly. And then I struggle to remember Mars Attacks, which I watched the day before. That shows how important those properties are for us growing up. And I think that's why Masters of the Universe, I still just really enjoyed it. Like it's even though it wasn't, I know it's not the best movie, and I think intellectually I know that. But there's part of me that is like, oh, that was fun.
Yeah, there's quite a few movies that do that for me. And I think if I go back to watching this the way I usually watch it, yes, it will still be that way. I'm just not allowed to sit and analyze it anymore. I have to not do that part of it. Same thing with Mars Attacks.
Obviously, you've done a lot of movies on your podcast, and I haven't listened to every episode. I've listened to it a lot. Have you done Ninja Turtles, or will you do Ninja Turtles at some point?
It starts with a T, so not yet.
Oh, of course. I guess I know that it's in alphabetical order, but then I also forget that. Well, in a few years, if it's on your shelf, keep me in mind for that one.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. I mean, I think we've given some very deep, ideas and reviews and recommendations to people about these two movies.
Yeah, I don't know if we've recommended them highly to watch, but
we put in a lot of caveats about watching it. Like, well, if you watch it, you have to remember these 35 things. Don't hate us.
If you tick all these boxes, you'll enjoy these movies.
Exactly. We don't hate them, but there's definitely a lot of like questions involved, like things you have to remember when you're looking at them. So, we can't technically recommend it, but if you watch it, just remember everything that we've said so far.
There's fun to be had for the right kind of people.
Yes. Brendan, well, thank you so much for being on the show this week.
Thank you for having me again.
Well, that's it for this episode of Off My Shelf. Until next time, you can follow along on Instagram and Twitter at ohmyshelf, or you can send an email to ohmyshelf@gmail.com. On the next episode, we'll be talking Matchstick Men and Memento. Hope you'll be here to listen.